Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to some race reaction for the 2022 Belgian Grand Prix. A race that promised so much yesterday and, delivered initially, but went very, very quiet, didn't it? I don't think that's going to go down, cliche alert, a Sean cliche alert, as one of the all-time classic races. But a few things in there that were quite interesting to keep an eye on. Some exciting stuff in there as well. Again, particularly early on, Max Verstappen coming through the field. Not that it took long. Charles Leclerc as well. And then, of course, because it's Ferrari, some questionable strategy calls as well, which I'm sure we'll get onto very, very shortly in the stream. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. And thank you for joining me. Obviously, we've got to kick this off by saying a massive thank you, as always, to Charles Edward Cheese for your incredibly generous super chat. Thank you so much for your support, mate, and your contributions. It means a hell of a lot. And I say this all the time, but I never feel like saying thank you is enough. But I hope you can maybe understand just how much it does mean. So thank you so much. You guys know what to do. We've got to get this stream to 500 likes. We're way off yet at 47, but let's see if we can get this to 500 or as close as possible. And of course, those who might like the stream a little bit later. And Charles has stopped in today to say, damn, that Red Bull is quick. Absolutely. Says, come on, Hammy, you messed it up, buddy. Was this a boring race or am I just a fanboy? I think boring would be a stretch for me, to be honest, Charles, but it wasn't a thriller. Let's put it that way. But I quite enjoyed a lot of that action at the midfield. But yeah, bit of a mess up from Lewis Hamilton. We will get onto that one, of course. We will probably start with the usual run through with the top three. We'll get as far as we can through that and as quickly as we can. Let's try and not take 3 hours to talk about one team, because that's the way we tend to roll on these streams. Joining me today, it's a very good evening. It's not been that long, but it feels like long enough, to Jonty. Good evening, mate. Did you enjoy that one?
Good evening, everyone. I think I've just about stopped laughing at Ferrari.
It's, we're going to get onto Ferrari, but you just, they have a quick car, and then they mess it up somehow with either bad strategy or reliability or a mistake from their drivers. They have a car that's not quick enough to compete, and they still manage to mess it up with strategy. But we'll get there in a moment. We'll start as we always do, mate. We'll fly through the orders. Through the order, there is only one order, with Red Bull and Max Verstappen. Started P14, I believe, just off the top of my head. I didn't write that one down, but started P14. I mean, before the race started, he was the bookie's favourite, as Crofty put it, to win the race. Did you think from P14, one, he'd win it, and two, he'd get to the front quite as quickly as he did?
I didn't think he'd get there quite as fast as he did, but I was certain that he was going to win. And myself and a few other people said it on Twitter. It's like, they really should have just started him in the pit lane. Go for that record. It's never been done. And look how far ahead he finished. What was it? 15, 16 seconds or something like that?
17.8, clear of Checo.
17.8 seconds. Clear of his teammate, who obviously should never have been difficult to pass. So, yeah, they should have just gone for the pit lane start. It's not like they've got a title to worry about.
No, I mean, I've put a poll in chat, just a bit of a cheeky poll, really, just saying, is the Drivers' Championship over? The three options are yes, no, or you never know. And it's 88% are saying yes. So, I mean, we'll talk about the Championship in a minute. I mean, that is as good as done now, I think. But, yeah, I see that. But I also see from Red Bull's point of view, again, it is a bit leery, but you do never know. And if you started from the pit lane and he ends up being sixth or something like that, and Leclerc and Ferrari get it together and there's a 1-2 finish, all of a sudden Red Bull look a bit stupid. But I tend to, looking with the benefit of looking at the race, how it unfolded, I think they could have started from the moon, quite frankly, and probably still won that race comfortably. I mean, what to say about Max? I mean, I'm just going to look at my notes, because to be honest, there's not, it feels really bad. He's come from 14th on the grid, but there's not really a lot to say. So P8 by the end of lap 1, P5 by the end of lap 6, P3 by the end of lap 8. Did complain on lap 10 of high degradation. He was in the lead by lap 12. Extended that first stint just by a little bit. He put the mediums on at his first stop, came out behind Sainz, but then was pretty quickly past Carlos Sainz, to be fair. In fact, I'm going to read you my notes, but I'm going to censor one word with the word puppy, as they do in Friends. I said, took the lead off Sainz on lap 18 at Les Combes and puppied off. That was it for his race. So second stop, lap 30 or end of lap 30, medium tyres. Easy P1, really. I mean, Was there any point in that race? It's such a redundant question, but was there any point in that race, Jonty, where you went, "Ooh, this is going to be close"?
Nope. Certainly not. Certainly not with the Red Bulls. Like, at all. The only thing that surprised me, even vaguely, was the fact that it took 2 laps for him to get past Checo instead of 1. That was it.
Yeah, surprised Red Bull didn't pull rank a little bit earlier on that, maybe. But I mean, obviously, again, with the benefit of hindsight, nearly 18 seconds up the road, it was fine. But when you're still in that early phase of the race and you've got the strategy to think about, it's time lost, isn't it? And if he got past Checo, would he have fallen behind Sainz after the stop? You know, there's a few things in there that don't matter now, but will have been going through people's minds at the time. So yeah, I kind of get that. I'm surprised they didn't swap them straight away. And I think Max said on the radio, didn't he, that we're losing time now.
Yeah, and like I said, the very next lap, past he went. So it's not exactly difficult.
No, I mean, I will say actually, just like I feel like the DRS was ridiculously OP today down the Kemmel Straight. I know that there'll be teams. I mean, look at Alex Albon, for goodness sake. I mean, such a slippery Williams. So cars were always going to breeze past on that straight, but the DRS seemed a little bit easy today. So, I mean, even without team orders, he was going to comfortably pass Checo, wasn't he? He just had the speed. He was in a different league. That's the best way to sum this up. Max Verstappen in a complete and total league of his own today. And I do find it a little bit, I'll make this clear, this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I do find it a little bit amusing that we've been talking the last few weeks and months about these alleged flexi flaws and how they're going to bring in a technical directive to try and police the porpoising and the bouncing a bit more. And is that going to affect Red Bull? Is it going to affect Ferrari? Will this bring Mercedes back into play? And Red Bull just dominated the weekend, basically disappearing up the road. Would have had pole if it wasn't for the engine penalties. Could start P14 and still manages to win by a country mile. I mean, I think there's going to be a few fans out there, maybe neutral fans, maybe Mercedes fans, maybe Ferrari fans, are going to look at this and go, next year then. Because that's kind of where we're at now, isn't it, for the drivers? And I'd argue, Jonty, let me just check the constructors very, very quickly. 475 place 357, and Ferrari aren't exactly getting it right, are they? Both championships done with, 8 races to go?
Yeah. Constructors even more than the drivers, to be honest.
Yeah, because you're relying on both Ferraris getting it right, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the things we were talking about before the summer break with Ferrari making mistakes, like, is their second at risk? Yeah, it really is. Mercedes, I suspect, are going to take that.
There is as well, there's a risk here. Or not a risk. I mean, if you are a Max Verstappen fan, by the way, you're buzzing tonight and you hope that what I'm about to say comes true. But there is a risk that we see a Sebastian Vettel 2013 situation here, isn't there? That Max Verstappen, he's won 3 in a row now. What did Seb win? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in a row. Max could trump that and get more race wins in a season than any other driver. I mean, this could be record-breaking stuff. And I know anything can happen in the final 8 races. Easily. Things can go wrong. But I said it in my preview, Red Bull are not making the mistakes that other teams are, and you've got a massively rapid car and a massively rapid Max Verstappen in it. That's a lethal combination.
Yeah, I mean, if he was to win all the remaining races, that's the most in a row, the most in a season, possibly highest percent. No, it wouldn't be highest percentage because old seasons with the silly only best results count thing. But it would also be the biggest margin. That's a lot of records to take in one go.
Yeah, I mean,
and I think Laura Leslie worked it out of what would be required for Leclerc to win. He's got to outscore Max by 11.6 points at every remaining race. That's impossible.
So that's not even him first, Max third, is it?
No.
He's got to rely on Max being off the podium and winning every single race.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it could go down to the wire. You never. I mean, look, stranger things have happened in Formula One, but this would be. I said it in my this week in F1 video as a bit of a joke. if Leclerc turns this around, it will be the greatest comeback since the BBC announced it was rebooting Gladiators. I mean, it would be pretty damn massive, wouldn't it? It's unlikely. But on the race, I mean, I've got nothing else to add on Max, not because I don't want to talk about him, but because he was just so dominant today. And I feel like we're going to have another one of those ends to the season like we had when we first started the channel, Jonty, when we got Lewis Hamilton winning every weekend, it felt like, and dominating the championships, and we were trying to look for battles elsewhere. So I think that's where we are second half of the season. But driver of the day as well, officially got fastest lap, pretty damn perfect, and won qualifying. So, you know, all right, didn't get pole because of his penalties, but still pretty much the perfect weekend from him. I can't fault him there. Sergio Perez though, well, I'm confused a little bit in some ways as to why Red Bull didn't send Max out yesterday in qualifying like Ferrari did with Leclerc to try and give Perez the tow to maybe try and help him get pole, maybe just worrying about that engine life and thinking long term. Bit surprised as well about the way he positioned himself on the grid to come across the sites, because that gave him wheel spin and all sorts, didn't it? And dropped him back through the field. Worked out quite nicely because of the first corner, or the incident up at the Lake Com chicane, but a bit of an odd one from Checo today, and ended up, well, like we keep saying, nearly 18 seconds off his teammate. That's, yes, your teammate's Max Verstappen, but that's still quite a hefty gap, isn't it, for Checo?
Yeah, especially with how good we know that car is, both in the corners and in a straight line. You know, I expected the gap to be quite a bit bigger to people behind him when you look at the pace of Max.
Yeah, 9 seconds ahead of Sainz.
But then you also have to think, does he have to put in that much effort? He knows he's going to have to move out of the way for Max, regardless of the situation. So is there any real point in him pushing to the point where he could make a mistake?
No,
you know, as long as he's in front of the Ferraris, who cares?
Yeah, he's kind of there. Maybe not as, some might argue it is as bad, but maybe not to the extent that Irvine and Barrichello were, and briefly Massa. But he is there to play that Irvine, Barrichello, Massa role to Verstappen that they played to Schumacher, isn't he? That's what he's there to do. So if Verstappen wins and Checo's second, Red Bull, most teams would say, yeah, but look at the gap to the teammate. Maybe Red Bull will look at that and say it doesn't matter if it's 0.8 of a second, 18 seconds, or 80 seconds. As long as he's second or beating our nearest rival, that's all that matters. And that's a good point, actually. If he disappears up the road, they can't pull the team orders, can they? So maybe they don't want that. But yeah, I mean, I'm not saying Checo had a bad race. I think you look at the gap to his teammate and you can't ignore that, even though he got a very good P2 today. I don't think he's having a horrendous season. He's not doing as well as I think he could have been this season. He has won a race. He has had a pole position. But sorry, I just look at the 2022 season results there, and you've got that big cluster of Red Bull wins, and then we've started another cluster of Red Bull wins, and you think, yeah, this... I think Stuart summed it up quite nicely, Jonty. I don't know if it was you or Dana said it to the other week, but he summed it up quite nicely in a stream where he said that Max Verstappen's dominating this, but it doesn't feel like it's been a dominant season, does it? It has still been, because I've seen some people complaining on Twitter about how, the 2022 rules were supposed to do this and make the racing better and all that. They have made the racing better, but we've just happened to have now a dominant team. But the racing and the season so far has still been quite exciting, I think. I think it's been one of the better ones in recent years. Not maybe as good as last year, but...
Yeah, I think a lot of that could be the fact that how it started. Because if you remember back at the start of the season, Ferrari came out of the gate like a rocket ship, and the Red Bulls blew up. Whereas when you get an incredibly dominant season, it usually starts dominant, and then you have a bit of a fight back. You know, it'll be one team winning for 2 or 3 races, and seeming like, oh yeah, they've got this locked up. But in this case, Ferrari had it. And then not so much them throwing it away at the start, apart from Imola maybe, but it was Red Bull taking the fight back to them, like, oh, we've got some catching up to do. So they did the catching up and carried on and disappeared.
Yes, but yeah, I suppose that cat and mouse thing, yeah. And obviously we had, what was it, Bahrain, Saudi were brilliant between Verstappen and Leclerc. I think it's helped as well a little bit this season by the fact that one weekend Mercedes have been good, Another weekend they've been all right, and another weekend they've been bad. That's kind of added to the drama at the front because you never know who's going to be in there. And I think that midfield has been really exciting as well, which I feel like we say all the time. We get to a point where a driver and a team are dominating. You go, yeah, but look at the midfield. But there is a lot of action in there. But I just think the season feels better, or as Stuart put it doesn't feel like it's been a dominant season, even though you now look at the championship and go, this has been a dominant season. But yeah, good point. The reliability early on. I mean, quick but fragile was what they described the Red Bull as in commentary a lot, and then here we are. I mean, they look very, very good. Just on Perez's race again, I said we've mentioned a bad start. Pitted at the end of lap 14 for the mediums. Question mark there for two-stop, which it ultimately was in the end. Only just out in front of Leclerc, which could have made things interesting, but did manage to hold him off. Overtook Sainz on lap 21 with DRS down the Kemmel Straight and into Les Combes, and his second stop was the end of lap 27 onto the hards. I mean, he was never, even though that gap to Verstappen's pretty big, he was never really threatened once he got P2 either, was he? So I think the Red Bulls looked pretty damn good today. And yeah, the chat seemed to agree in the poll that this is all done and dusted. 87% yes, 3% no, and you never know for 10% who are like me, just clinging on to some kind of optimism, hoping for a close season, but not going to happen now, is it?
No, I mean, you have to go back to Horner's comments in April, May, quite early on, when asked about the difference between making a quick car reliable or making a reliable car fast. And a lot of people disagree with him, saying that you need that reliability that you can then build on. Like, for example, the Williams a few years ago when it was finishing every single race. So it was sort of picking up some results simply by virtue of getting to the end when other people weren't. I disagree with him as well, but I think he's proved to everyone that the other way around is the best one. They had a fragile car, they made it reliable, and now look what's happening.
Kind of unstoppable, aren't they? I'm just going to take some stuff from chat here. Zero says, the Drivers' Championship has been over a long while, in my view. And to be fair, actually, Jonty will defend me on this. I did message Jonty, I think it was Jonty yesterday, on Twitter, and I was sort of saying about how really I felt like this has been done since Canada, because we had that, was it 5 out of 6 for Max, and 6 out of 8 or something like that, and 6 in a row for Red Bull, and it felt then like the championship was going one way, and then Ferrari had a couple of good races. You thought, oh, maybe they could turn it around, but nope, that didn't happen. We'll get to Ferrari in a second as well. I'm just trying to avoid comments about things that aren't Red Bull related. Red Bull have a light chassis soon too, I believe, says Eli or Ellie. Eli.
So get even faster. Great.
Yeah. Well, this is it, isn't it? This is what the point was being made the other week, that with Alfa Romeo, are they getting slower, or is it just that others are getting better? Well, there's a bit of both, because actually what's happening as well is that everyone's now getting lighter, because Alfa started the season with the car pretty much on the weight limit, and now everyone's kind of coming down to that. So that's why maybe they're going backwards and others are moving forward, or part of the reason why. So maybe if Red Bull get lighter, this could be pretty crazy. Dr. Vidya says, I hope that Max wins the championship for Mexico so Perez can win there. I haven't done the permutations on when he can win it, but it's pretty. I think there's 200, and in fact, I'm going to do the maths. I am going to use a calculator. I'm going to do it live. So 26 by 8. We've also got a sprint race as well. So 216 points available. The gap is 93. I mean, I think it's more likely Red Bull are going to have to throw this away, not Ferrari win it, to be honest, if this is going to swing. So unlikely. Just trying to have a look to see if anybody said anything on Red Bull before we move on to Ferrari. A lot of people talk about other things. Some talk about how people thought it was boring when Mercedes were winning, and now it's just as boring now. I mean, we don't have to get into that kind of thing. It's some people find it boring. Like when Schumacher was dominating, I loved it, but I was a Schumacher fan. Verstappen fans are going to love this. Hamilton fans will have loved him dominating. It all depends on who you are and who you're supporting. So people are saying World Drivers' Championship after Singapore, says Freddie. And
yeah.
Jelly says Drivers is probably over in Japan.
I mean, I'll agree with the comment earlier. I'd love for it to be so, not before Mexico. So then Perez can be permitted to win Mexico.
Permitted.
Solely to see how his dad reacts. Because that's always a meme.
Look, how wasn't he got a podium? Imagine if he got the win. Wow, yeah, that'd be amazing.
And the crowd with that very unique podium they have there. in the last sector as opposed to at the start-finish line. It'd be awesome.
Great atmosphere. Do you know, I think that's one of the races I'd love to go to is Mexico. Just for the atmosphere there. It's got to be on the list. I mean, Mexico as a country, I'd love to go to Mexico, but that ain't going to happen. I'm going to tell you a very quick story that I will promise I'll move on to Ferrari. I've been on an aeroplane once, and that was from Liverpool to the Isle of Man. Oh, yeah. It's basically straight up and straight back down again, and I swear I could have screamed all the way. I am not good with heights.
Was it even a big plane?
No. It was what? See, I would look at it and go, "That's a jet." It's not a jet. It wasn't like a tiny private plane or anything, but it wasn't a proper It wasn't like your British Airways, American Airlines, massive jets or anything like that. Your Boeings, if you like. But I'm not good with heights. I can't do ladders. I can't stand at the top of the stairs. Yeah, I'm weird. Anyway, Carlos Sainz and Ferrari. Great day for them. P3 and somehow P6. We'll get to Leclerc in a moment. I'll read through Sainz's notes. High degradation on lap 9, lap before Max Verstappen, then pitted at the end of lap 11, so extended as well. The mediums came out behind Ricciardo, which could have been costly, but got past quite nicely and poo on with the fresh tyres on. Plan D, I don't know what lap that was that I wrote that down, but I'm guessing like lap 2 probably, knowing Ferrari, so Plan D. I did question maybe a soft to medium one stop when they said Plan D, Jonty, but that didn't happen because he ended up pissing on lap 25 for the hard tyres. So I'm just wondering if Ferrari here, talking strategy with Carlos Sainz, if they could have put the hards on. But degradation did seem quite high today on all the tyres, didn't it? I think a lot of people, I was surprised to see some of the hard runners come in again for another set of hards and mediums and things like that.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk on commentary and radio about it being thermal deg as opposed to wear, which can be a lot worse as far as grip's concerned, and much more difficult to manage. It could explain the pace of a few people throughout the field, to be honest. Anyone trying to go long, they've got to really manage that well.
Just to answer the question in chat, by the way, my comment about it being a great day for Ferrari was sarcasm. Complete sarcasm. I need to put on a proper stupid voice for sarcasm because it doesn't always come across. I know I'm quite monotone at times, or most of the time, but there you go. That is who I am. So yeah, I mean, Carlos Sainz, to be fair to him, couldn't have done much more today, could he, Jonty? I feel that Red Bull was as quick as it was going to be. 9 seconds off Perez. I think he was doing okay. I just don't think the car was underneath him today, because even George Russell was a threat in P4 until he made his mistake. We'll get to Russell later, but there was a real threat today that Ferrari weren't going to get a podium. So Carlos maybe a little bit lucky there, but you got to be there, take advantage, look, blah, 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 blah. But do you feel like he could have done more, or was that about the maximum for him? 9 seconds off Checo, that's a lot to make up on a car that is, frankly, becoming unstoppable.
Oh, yeah, there's no way he could have done any more. It would have required like a major mistake from Perez or Red Bull completely screwing up strategy, which I just don't see happening at the moment. He got the absolute maximum he could.
McLaren were on Plan G today, weren't they? So I just look at chat as well. McLaren a bit more dodgy than Ferrari with their number of plans, but yeah, no, Plan D. I don't know what that was in the end. So yeah, I think Carlos, good race. Again, little bit of luck that Russell made his mistake. I'm not saying Russell would have got him, but he would have been right in that fight, and with that OP run down the Kemmel Straight with the DRS, then probably would have got through. But yeah, I've not got anything on sites. He didn't have a quiet race as such, because he was up there and he was leading for a while, and then had to try and fend off the Red Bulls as best he could, which didn't really work. He didn't have the pace today, but we didn't see a huge amount of him once he'd ended up in third place. But he did all right to Carlos today. I think he had a good race. Charles Leclerc started down in P15, was P10 by the end of lap 1 for one reason or another. But unfortunately, he got a tear off visor stuck in his brakes. That caused some smoking, so he had to pit to have that removed and went onto the medium tyre under the safety car, which I think the fact it was under the safety car made that less dramatic than perhaps it would have been if that had been mid-race or something like that. So you think, maybe he's got away with that one. Unfortunately, not really.
No.
It's a meme, and everyone pokes fun at Ferrari for their strategy, but it feels like it's beyond a joke, really. So if you haven't seen the race, then spoiler alert. Why you want a race reaction? But yes, spoiler alert. He pitted with a couple of laps to go to put on the soft tyres to go for fastest lap. He came out behind Fernando Alonso, had to mess about trying to... Well, he came out just ahead of him, then Alonso got through. Then he had to mess about trying to get back past Alonso. He then went round on the final lap, having got past Alonso, didn't set the fastest lap, and then to compound his misery, got a time penalty for speeding in the pit lane, which dropped him down to 6th place. Now, Charles Leclerc absolutely has taken the blame for speeding in the pit lane. I understand that. A few people were questioning whether it was from earlier in the race, but I don't see how race control would wait that long to make that decision. It was clearly that was the penalty was for that final stop. But Ferrari have got to take some responsibility as well. Why are you calling Charles Leclerc in to try and get the 1 point for fastest lap when you haven't really, or you've only just got the margin over the driver behind? Because I'm not a genius at all, but 10 points for P5 is more than 8 points for P6, and 1 point and you end up P6 would have only been 9, so you're 1 point worse off. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever as a strategy call. Even if he gets the 1 point, woohoo! That's going to turn the championship around. It was a risk that just didn't feel necessary. He didn't really have the gap to Alonso, and then to make it worse, he's gone for a point for fastest lap and ended up 2 points worse off.
Yeah, but you're missing a vital point here. This mistake started yesterday.
I wasn't paying much attention yesterday, if I'm being honest.
No, because when they sent out Leclerc just to do the towing run for Sainz, they put him on a brand new set of softs. So that meant that he had a brand new set less for the race. And obviously he's going to start. Did he start on softs? I can't remember.
Yeah, he started on soft tyres, yeah.
Yeah, so he starts in the brand new ones, and then for the fastest lap, they're already scrubbed. Even if they've done a lap, it's still gone through a little bit of a thermal cycle. It will take life out of the tyre, which is just duh. They tried to go for that 1 point taken off Max, and it cost them 2.
This is what I'm saying. The whole thing. Now you've added the tyre thing in there, it makes even less sense. I mean, I'm not a strategist. I'd never claim to be a strategist, but I feel like I could have a go. I think most people in the chat room are going, do you know what, Sean? Yeah, I think I can have a go at this and probably get this right. It's so bizarre. All they had to do was leave him out, and they're 2 points better off than they are. Why take that? I just don't understand the risk. It's not, if you're in a championship, if he's 8 points behind Max Verstappen in the championship, I could sort of cut them a bit of slack and go, okay, fair enough. Then they've tried. It's not worked. They look a bit foolish, but at least they tried it. They've got to go for it because the championship's so tight. But surely their job at Ferrari now, which if you're a Ferrari fan, I'm sorry to bring you down, but if you're a Ferrari team right now, your goal is quite simply outscore Mercedes and make sure you finish second. So why are they taking that risk? They weren't going to get George Russell. Lewis Hamilton's out the race. Yeah, all right, easy with hindsight, but we were calling it at the time.
And then you've got the other elements of, a pit stop is a risk. Just ask Valtteri. That's the classic one to always go back to with his wheel stuck on.
Yeah.
Because they rounded off the nut. Or even just a slow wheel. All sorts can happen.
Pit lane speeding.
And then, did you mention it? I can't remember. The fact that he then sped in the pit lane.
Yeah.
Got the penalties.
Which drops into 6th, which means he's 2 points worse off.
My tweet about it is it's so ridiculous. Like, someone like Michael Bay couldn't make this up for a movie. It's so unbelievably stupid. What's the worst thing that could possibly happen with this decision we're about to make? Oh, no, it actually went worse.
It does, doesn't it? It really...
But the big question is, where is the blame and buck going to stop for that? If you look at any other sport, it's the coach, the manager, whatever, that's getting the stick for such constant errors. Yes, I mean, drivers make mistakes and pit crew can make mistakes, strategists make mistakes, but in the end, crap rolls uphill and sticks to the one at the top. And it's been going on for so long now. How long can Binotto stay in that position?
I've got a great shout from Nikki in chat, actually. Says Leclerc also finished 7/10 ahead. 7th, could have also finished, 7th instead of 6th. I'm just looking at the timing. He was only 7/10 clear of Ocon.
Yeah, exactly.
That could have been an even bigger disaster than it was. So it just doesn't make any sense to anybody. And the thing is, I have to be consistent. I think it's only fair. We're going back a little while. When Eric Boulier was in charge at McLaren, I think it was McLaren, people were talking about the things that weren't working there, the things that were going wrong. Where does the book stop? I've always been a believer, as some people think it's really unfair and really harsh to say, but I've always been a believer that the buck stops with the person in charge. So if you're running a supermarket and that supermarket is failing, whether it's the staff's fault or not, the buck stops with the manager. If a school is failing, the buck stops with the headmaster. Do you know what I mean? And that for me is ultimately he has to take that responsibility, because he then comes out and says things like, I don't think anything needs to change, paraphrasing, but I don't think anything needs to change. Everything's good. We'll go away. We'll talk about it internally, and we'll bounce back from this. What's the phrase? What's the phrase that he used? It was something like, we'll learn and grow from this. The team's been in the sport for 72 bloody years. I know the sport's come a long way. This isn't a new team with a new team boss and a bunch of new drivers and new mechanics. This is Ferrari, for goodness sake. And of course, they're not the only team to make mistakes on strategy, but it feels like we're having this conversation almost every bloody weekend for one reason or another. So to answer your question, Jonty, and to be consistent with the points I've made before, the book has to stop with Binotto, which I think in some ways would be a shame, because I think he is a good team principal. He's not. No, maybe he's not a good team principal then. I was going to say he's just not managing his strategy department very well, in which case, is he a good team principal? I don't know. What I'm saying is I like Binotto. I do like Binotto. I think that's where you've got to, like I say, the book should stop with the person in charge at the end of the day.
Yeah, I like him as well. And, I have for a while. But when you saw the big resurgence of Ferrari that gave Vettel the shots at the title, which was 2017, the first time they were really in it, Binotto was technical. Was head of technical director, head of technical, whatever they want to label it as, with Arriva Bene as the principal. And the pace seemed to slowly drop after Binotto stepped up, went the next rung up the ladder. He should have stayed in that job. They should have got someone else for a team principal. Looking back with hindsight, maybe they could have grabbed someone like Mike Crack. Someone from outside, so they're not constantly shuffling people around. Get fresh blood in there. Because when someone is doing an awesome job at their job, don't bloody move them.
I'm 36 years old, and I'm sat here
and
laughing.
You're still laughing
at
Mike Crack.
No, just the fact that that's funny anyway, but the fact you said grab Mike Crack. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Anyway, yeah, pretty disastrous for Ferrari today, I think it's fair to say. Go on, Jonty, while I just try and compose myself for a second. Jesus.
I mean, a lot of people talk about how you sort of advance to the level of your skills. Yeah, in whatever field that you work in. That's wrong. In reality, you advance to the level of your incompetence, of where your skills stop. Because you're good at something, you move up, and you're good, and you move up. And because you're good, they move you up again, and then you fail, and that's where you stay and never go any further. That's what's happened to Binotto. He's gone up to that level, and there's nothing else he can do. He would pretty much ruin any chances of getting involved with the FIA and directorship there and what have you later in life, because of how bad this is going. It will put a hell of a stain on his career, and he needs to put a stop to it pretty quickly.
I'm okay now. I just look at the chat now. Nick says 72 years ago, Ferrari finished 5th and 6th at Spa. So 3rd and 6th is definitely an improvement. I like that comment. Very, very good. I saw DJ Red Raven was asking, the question is, does Binotto have the power to replace the head of strategy? What is the internal power structure of Ferrari? I'd wager not even Ferrari know, to be honest. Red Raven, the way they are going. Ferrari have a good car. It's managing everything around the car that is going wrong. Again, says Red Raven. Our Ted Kravitz, of course. So, yeah, they have got a good car. It's quick. It's not quick this weekend. I suppose quickly then, chat can get involved as well. I'll throw it at you, Jonty, because it's the big question mark on this weekend. Because they are suddenly so far behind Red Bull, has the new technical directive affected Ferrari? Because Mattia Binotto did say when the technical directive was announced that they would have to make changes at Spa. Could there have been an impact?
Ooh. Are you publicly suggesting that they've been cheating for the first half of the season, John?
No, because the rules were fine. They allowed it, so it wouldn't be cheating. It would be cheating if they had it now. I'm just making the point that Christian Horner, when the technical directive was announced, was like, nope, our car's fine. It won't be an issue. Shouldn't have to change anything. Everything's good. But Mattia Binotto was like, no, we'll be fine, but we will have to make changes for Spa. So have they had to tweak something? Nothing major, maybe, but just tweak something. And losing half a tenth, the way Red Bull are at the minute, especially if they turn up with a package that's even better, it could be quite costly for Ferrari. So I'm just wondering if something had to change. It might not have done. I've not seen their report on what they've brought to the car this weekend, but it's just a thought. It seems a little coincidental. It might just be that Red Bull turned up with the perfect car, the perfect strategy, and absolutely smashed it.
Yeah, although thinking along those lines, you have to wonder if the technical directives come in and 18 cars on the grid have suffered because of it when you look at the pace of the Red Bull today. It would explain a lot. If they're the only ones that have actually got it right without having to change anything when this directive comes in, there's your extra jump in the already dominant pace they had.
Reminds me of when people were putting question marks around engine modes and things, and they brought in the engine mode rule. I think that was around Spa a few years ago, and everyone's like, oh, this will stop Mercedes domination, and then they disappeared with the championship still, and everyone's going, oh, damn. I mean, look,
yeah,
the FIA always like to try and slow the winning team down, don't they? They did it with Ferrari a lot, they did it with Mercedes. They always like to try and close the field up, which is what these regs were supposed to do, and I think they have to a point. We do have a dominant team, but I still think they've worked. I'm not saying the FIA, that's why they did it. They're saying it's on safety grounds, but I think people get excited when they see a rule change or a technical directive or something like that and go, oh, this is it. This is it. This is it. The season's going to turn. This is going to be great. And then Red Bull go, yeah. And you've got Lewis Hamilton on the radio going 1.8 seconds to Verstappen. And you've got, what? Sainz 26 seconds off. Leclerc 74.9 seconds off. Let's be fair. He got a penalty, so he's only just over a minute off. But it feels like it's been a swing over the summer break a little bit, doesn't there? Although Ferrari weren't really getting it right. I'll take a couple of your questions. Well, not questions, but your points in chat, and then we'll move on to Mercedes super quickly. I didn't want to talk for 40 minutes on the top three teams, but we're at 45 minutes, so I didn't talk for 40 minutes on the top three teams. We will fly through the others, though.
Although I will say, I do think it's funny how a lot of people seem to be reacting as if these things are brought in, these reg changes are brought in to hamper X, Y, or Z team, as if it's a new thing. It's not. This has been going on since the 60s. As far back as that, engine sizes and layouts were changed to hamper the dominant teams. The end of the early 80s, ground effect was banned for safety, but also to hamper Lotus and a few others who had got it just right. Turbo engines were banned. V12s were banned, active suspension were banned. McLaren, Ferrari, Williams, Mercedes, Renault in the mid-2000s, they've all suffered this. It's not a new thing at all.
Fancy secret pedal on the McLaren back in the 90s.
Exactly.
Yeah. I thought I was very clever, but yeah. I just saw somebody say in chat that I wanted to read, and it's gone. Andrea, says, I think the technical directive has had an effect, but I also think it is very track specific. That's absolutely a possibility. possibility. Larry says Ferrari in the past, Binotto and others would be gone already, but he's a yes man. Ferrari can control him. It's a joke, but they're more worried about control and it's ruining their reputation. Words there from Larry. Nice. Jonty's got tinfoil hats out. Wait a sec.
Ruining their reputation, or is that just Ferrari's reputation? Control. Go back to the beginning. That's entirely what their reputation is and always has been. It's just that now it's not working out.
No comment. Tudor says it is honestly hilarious when I think about how the only safe position at Ferrari is head of strategy. It's like Looney Tunes. And I just... why has that done that? Sorry, my chat's just gone a bit funky. Bear with. There we go. I think we're okay. And one more... very quickly, maybe not. I'm just trying. There's lots of conversations going on in the chat, and I don't want to just keep reading out the same people as well. I'm trying to give everyone a chance to have their say. The only reason you get fired from Ferrari is for talking bad about Ferrari, says Southpaw DG.
Unless your name is Nicky Lauda.
Nicky Lauda could have done what he wanted. Bless him. He was allowed to do what he wanted.
Yeah.
Mike says Ferrari don't give a damn about their reputation, about their bad reputation.
Oh no, they do. They absolutely do. And you mentioned Prost, absolute classic example of it. Yeah, it's a while ago now. Oh, Christ, 29 years?
Oh, is that all?
20, 30? Was it 91 or 92?
91.
Yeah.
End of 91.
Triple world champion.
91.
Talks bad about the team and the car, and he sacked mid-season. Can you imagine that happening now? I mean, look at what similar thing have we had from anyone recently? You know, just like, for example, Vettel's radio in qualifying a couple of races ago. Oh, come on, you know, how did we get it so wrong? That was about as severe as what Prost said.
Yeah. Maybe. Ugh. I'll get some angry Italians now and angry Ferrari fans. Maybe standards have slipped. Maybe that kind of thing wasn't allowed back then because the standards were higher. Maybe they've slipped a bit now. I don't know. The world's a different place as well, of course. You know, you've got to think people want to see a more human side to drivers, so they want team radio like that, and maybe Ferrari let it go a bit. But I'd like to think they rein things in if they need to. I don't know. It's all. Yeah. Let's roll on to Mercedes, who had. Should we call it a mixed day today? I think we'll go with a mixed day. Why not? George Russell finished in P4. Could, like I say, have had P3 had he not made those mistakes at Stavolo. He was really closing in quite nicely on Carlos Sainz, actually. I'm going to read through my notes for him and then we'll talk about him a bit more. Pitted on at the end of lap 13 for the mediums. I've kind of written here a bit of a race of his own, bit lonely at times until he sort of started to come back at Carlos Sainz. But I think that's kind of, in some ways, a story of parts of George Russell's season. He's very much been in races kind of quietly getting on with it. He's had his moments, of course. That's some pretty hefty contact moments as well. But he generally seems to just get on with it at the moment. Second stop, end of lap 28. He was called in, but then said he wanted to stay out, so he extended his stint just a little bit, eventually pitting on the end of lap 29 to put the hards on. Like I say, he was closing in on Sainz wide at Stavolo, and that cost him a shot. I think about 7/10. And he said after the race that his tyres, it took the tyres out the window. And when it comes to Formula One, once your tyres are out of the window, then you're going to struggle to get them back in there. So quite costly. But P4 today, he did say if they'd have said they were 2 seconds off P3, he'd have taken that this morning. So, I mean, you know, he's got to be pretty happy with that. I'm not going to say he couldn't have done much more, Jonty, because as I've just said there, he could have without the mistake. But again, P4, start of today with the pace they had yesterday, they'd absolutely have taken that, wouldn't they?
Yeah, you have to think so. I mean, it wasn't a massive mistake, but it was enough. Yeah, and he was only going to be in with a chance at more anyway, so it wasn't like it was that dramatic. But they have to be pleased with the race pace. You know, they really weren't great in qualifying yesterday. So today has been positive in what it represents. Not exactly much to take from the weekend, and we don't know what Lewis's race pace would have been.
Yeah, that's very true. We'll get to Lewis in a minute, but yeah, I think it's difficult. I want to talk for a bit on George, but it's kind of difficult to just sit here and keep saying the same thing because we didn't see a huge amount of him. Didn't have to do too much battling other than around pit stops, but a lonely race, I can't think of anything really. Let's have a look at the times. 2.2 behind Sainz, but 44 seconds clear of Fernando Alonso. So after penalty, even with penalties, he was still, or without penalties, sorry, still 30 odd seconds clear of Charles Leclerc. Drives the other Ferrari. Sorry, I had a proper brain fart there. So yeah, I don't think he was ever threatened from behind. So pushing for that podium, kind of a shame he didn't get it really. I think that would have been a nice thing for Mercedes. It would have been nice for him as well. But it just didn't work out today, ultimately. But still, P4. What is that? 12 points, 12 more points. He's extended his gap over his teammate a little bit as well, who was, Lewis, 5 podiums in a row. Was starting to come back at him a little bit. So turning that around was nice as well for him to sort of extend that gap. It keeps Mercedes in that hunt for P2, which I think is what... I think if you... I'm not saying Mercedes they're gonna want P2. They're gonna want to chase P2, but I don't think it'll destroy their season if they end up third, because that's kind of where they were at the start of the year anyway, weren't they? And it's where they sort of still are now. But we've had a chat in DMs, Jonty. I think we both sort of feel like Mercedes have got a shot at that second place, provided the pace we saw this weekend isn't track specific. Because if it isn't track specific and they can bounce back at Zandvoort and say a Monza, for example, then they're right in the hunt to take Ferrari on. If this is genuine pace of the car, then, let's settle for P3 and they can focus on developing next year's car, which I think by the sounds of it, they're pretty much already doing from what Toto Wolff was saying pre-race.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're smart enough to be pragmatic about it and just say, we're done, we can get what we can and work on next year. Hopefully work on it without the silly philosophy they've gone with that clearly doesn't work. But I do think we're going to see more from them places like Singapore and Zandvoort rather than Monza. Because on the high speed, obviously they're going to be suffering with the porpoising again, and we did see it a little bit from Russell. But when they get onto the slower, twisty stuff, that's where the biggest strength is. So they could pull a couple of surprises still. I don't think a win is completely out of the question if they get, a bit of chaos. But yeah, they've just got to accept it as done.
I mean, if they can, I take your point. I mean, if they can set the car up in a way where they can not compromise the race pace too much, but put a lot of focus on quali somewhere like Singapore. You can overtake at Singapore. You've got that long run, haven't you? So there is the possibility, but it's still a street track. It's hard to overtake on. So get quali right. Maybe Lewis Hamilton puts in one of those laps from a few years ago at Singapore, which, call it British bias if you want, I don't care. It's true. It's one of the greatest qualifying laps of all time. It was absolutely phenomenal. If he puts in one of them again, or George Russell manages to do something like that and they get pole, then they can control the pace a little bit at the front. Again, you can overtake at Singapore versus, say, a Monaco, but a little bit harder on a street track. They might be able to play it a little bit. There's always the option to ask your second driver, whoever that is on the track, to stick it in the wall and get a safety car out, and then you can pit and win the race, and then still add that to your tally of race wins. I'm just saying there are options in Singapore when it comes to strategy.
Yeah, there are.
Love you really, Fernando. So no, I take your point. I think that's a good point. Singapore is trying to think. I mean, Lewis likes Brazil, but he likes most races, doesn't he? I mean, his record of the last few years. So it's really the car at the moment. Trying to think of anything else that might swing Mercedes' way. But my point is, if they can get the car right for the rest of this season, then with Ferrari making their mistakes, they've got a great shot at P2, and I think they'd have taken that 3 months ago quite happily, wouldn't they? So, Lewis Hamilton, I mean, what do you want me to say? What is there to say? Side by side, we've actually got a good start, by the way. Great start. Obviously, Perez had a bad one, but good start. Fernando got a good start. Alonso, Hamilton, side by side down the Kemmel straight, and you're going, oh, here we go. This is what we want to see. And then kind of turns in on Fernando, leaves him absolutely no space and ends up in the air. There'll be a picture in a moment. It's a screen grab, so apologies for the quality of it, but Lewis Hamilton kind of in the air, and his race is over with damage and whatnot, and that's game over. And you know, there it is. It's 100% on him. And to be fair to him, he's taken responsibility. He said afterwards, it was my fault. And then said Alonso was in his blind spot. He didn't leave Alonso enough room. It was my fault. So he's taken responsibility. He's taken the blame. It is 100% on him. And with respect to anybody that comes at me later for saying, oh, it's typical Sean hates Lewis Hamilton because he's blaming him for that, then Lewis Hamilton himself has said it was my fault. So I'm going to take his word over yours with all due respect. A bit. I get the blind spot argument, but it's lap 1. It's Les Combes. He knows Fernando's there somewhere. Just leave a bit of room, Lewis. And I'm going to throw in an F1 cliche here for you, Jonty. You can't win an F1 race on the first lap. You can only lose it.
Yeah. It was entirely his fault. And as you said, the second he was in the media pen, first question, it was, my fault. That's, and I have to say that's the big difference between him and some other drivers on the grid. Possibly the person that he hit would have been pretty much throwing Hamilton under the bus for it. Throwing the inside driver under the bus for it. And a lot of people don't seem to get that. That's probably why he's so almost universally adored, because he's always been that way. So it's nice it's not nice to see the mistakes, but it's nice to hear him have a chance to be like that again. Although I am surprised there wasn't more. Yes, he's taken himself out of the race and didn't really do any damage to Alonso, but the way the move was done, that would usually result in a reprimand or at least a point or two.
Yeah,
It is a strictly driving standards thing.
Yeah, like you say, maybe the fact he took himself out of the race, the stewards thought there's no point giving him a penalty because he's out of the race. He's got the ultimate penalty, but they don't apply that to every incident, do they? So I think Martin Brundle said he was expecting something like a grid drop or something for the next race. I'm with you, at least a word from the stewards and a ticking off and maybe some points. Although he did get a ticking off from the stewards because, and I know if anything's going to rile up Jonty, it's going to be this next line. He did refuse to go to the medical centre and was given a warning from the stewards.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you could argue, and we can go back to the jewellery ban if you want, you can argue he can do what he wants with his health and his body, but ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, and this goes for every single driver, if you are told to go to the medical centre, you go to the bloody medical centre. Obviously, he felt all right. I'm not defending it, but I think you have to go if the stewards quit, and that's why he's had a warning for that one. So he has had a warning for that, but like you, I'm surprised it wasn't at least to be investigated after the race.
Yeah.
Is kind of how I feel on that one, but would a grid drop be too harsh? Maybe a fine and a ticking off and a couple of points?
That would usually result in a fine, possibly points. But the one tiny thing that might possibly defend him for that, whenever we see someone required to go to the medical centre because of the system picking up G sensors being triggered or what have you, which I would assume is what could have caused this. After going that high in the air and coming down flat on a car with no suspension and a hard floor, that could well trigger a G meter. Medical car turns up and forces them to go to the medical centre. Where was it? You can't just then decide later, oh, maybe you should go here. So it's a bit of 50-50 on that one, I think.
One positive for Lewis, though, it looked like he had quite a nice walk. I wouldn't mind a walk around Spa.
It did look pleasant, yeah.
Surprised about the car to take him away, as you say, or a bike or something. So quite a long walk. But do you want me to? Because I know some of you hate it when I do this. Some of you really love it. Do you want me to throw something in there? Just poke something, which sounds wrong. I'm going to do it. Do you remember that shot of Lewis Hamilton walking away from his McLaren in 2012 at Singapore? Thank you for your super chat, Stein Van Dorn. Said excited for next week. I will be watching from the dunes. Oh, enjoy, mate. I hope you have a great time. I'd love to do Zandvoort. Just have this nagging feeling Ferrari will win for some reason, just to spite the Dutch. Thank you very much, Stein. Enjoy the weekend. I'm very jealous. I'd love to do Zandvoort. So, yeah. No, I just thought I'd throw that in there. It's nothing. It's a nothing comment. It's. You know, I have this channel because I want to share my thoughts after a race. The second I saw that shot of him walking away, that's where my head went. It doesn't mean anything's going to happen. It probably isn't, but I'm just making the point that he's not happy with the car. 1.8 seconds off in quali, and then you see that and you think, probably, if you want me to be honest, he's probably walking away with his head down like that because he knows he's made the mistake. That's
absolutely. And Renault Giguere, possibly. I'm guessing at pronunciation, makes a valid point. If the car wasn't damaged, what's he going to do? Come into the pits and go to the medical centre? Because he would have kept going, wouldn't he?
Oh, yeah, I'm just looking at the comment. Yeah, sorry, yeah. No, that's fair, yeah. No, that's a good point. I just... maybe it's too simplistic to say if you're told to go to the medical centre, you go. I have been told before by my partner to go to the hospital when I've been extremely ill, and I haven't, because I'll be okay. Bit different in Formula One, I know, but, you know, you feel okay, you feel okay. I get that, yeah, I get that. But I've not got anything to add on Hamilton, really. Just, I guess that he seemed pretty fed up after quali, didn't he? And Toto Wolff was saying, as I touched on a moment ago, pre-race, they've got to find a balance, right? Because they want to go racing this season, they want to fight, and they want to enjoy what they're doing, but they also have to look towards next year. Is the point he was kind of making. So I'm not saying they're writing off the rest of the year, because they're not, because I still think they've got a shot at getting Ferrari. But don't be surprised if we get very few, if any, updates on that car between now and the end of the year. Which I guess you've got to do, haven't you? They're not going to win either championship. They're both over. They might get second, but there's no guarantees on that. So they've got third sorted.
Yeah, they're at no risk of losing their current position. So why waste the effort?
It's kind of how I feel, yeah. So we'll move on from... I've just have a pen on the floor like an idiot. We'll move on from Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton then. Again, not much to say. His race didn't last more than 5. Well, it did. It went a bit further. He managed to keep the car going after it had come down from that angle and hit the ground. So, yeah, but he was told to stop the car later on in the lap. But we'll move on to Fernando Alonso. We're sort of talking about him anyway because of that what happened there with Hamilton. I mean, fantastic weekend for Fernando. If anyone was ever going to throw the hand grenade into the driver market that he did and then turn up and have a cracking weekend at the next race, it was going to be Fernando, third on the grid, which is fantastic. We've already gone over the Hamilton incident. Nothing on Fernando there. Other than pulling onto the grass, there's nothing he can do there. So nothing on Fernando. Pitted end of lap 11 for the mediums. Second stop, though, came in on lap 25, end of lap 25, put on the hards. It was quite a slow stop at 3.6 seconds. He did end up behind some cars, or well behind some cars, actually, but he soon caught them. Nice move on Zhou through, I think it was turns 6, 7, and 8 as well to pick up on. But just a nice race for Fernando. Strategy was a good strategy. Made his way past cars when he needed to, and ultimately ended up with a perhaps slightly surprising P5, given where he was with 2 laps to go, comfortably 6th, and all of a sudden finds himself 5th place and a couple of extra points. So he did say after the race in the interview pen that he was asked about the Ferrari strategy. Were you surprised to see Leclerc come in to go for fastest lap? And Alonso said, yes, but Ferrari do tend to do strange things with their strategy. Well, for once, Ferrari got a strategy right that benefited Fernando Alonso, which is fantastic news for them. So, yeah, I mean, again, not much on Fernando, just a really great race for him. Esteban Ocon as well, Jonty, I think was good today. People will look at that and see 5th and 7th and think, oh, well, not great. He's quite well off his teammate, but he wasn't that far off, really. And Ocon was one of the raciest drivers out there today, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah. It was, apart from those couple of moves you've already mentioned, it was another one of those fairly lonely, just cruise around and get more points than you expected. because everyone else is having the problems. It must be nice to have races like that. I've often thought, when things happen to other people, you just poot along and go, oh, I finished there, did I? I didn't see anyone.
Yeah, what is it? Nigel Mansell once said there were no easy races, but sometimes you look at them and you think, that looked quite straightforward. Not that I could do it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, but I think the best thing we saw from Alpine today was from the other car.
Ocon.
Oh, yes.
Which move? I've got a couple listed.
No, I'm going to go out. I'm going to put it out there. Ocon's move was better than Häkkönen's.
No.
One, the cars are much closer paced. Two, it wasn't a back marker in the middle. It was two people he was actually fighting against. And three, he had to do it around the outside. -1 point for DRS being used. That's an overall +2.
Yeah.
Maybe make it a plus. Maybe lose another point because he wasn't doing it against the world champion.
I was going to say, I mean, there's quite the difference between, with respect, Gasly, Vettel, and Michael Schumacher. See, I disagree because that was
between Vettel and Schumacher. To be fair,
there was. See, I disagree because it was so much harder to overtake back then than it is now. You've already mentioned the DRS, to be fair, but you don't have the DRS to help you out. No, I can't say. And this is a Schumacher fanboy saying this, by the way. I should be going, oh god, yeah, Häkkönen's move was terrible, but Häkkönen also he's up against a back marker who's trying to get out of the way. Zonta could have come to the inside to let Schumacher go more clearly, and Häkkönen would have been in the back of him. That feels braver to me in those cars.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm not criticising you, Jonty. You are completely entitled to your opinion, mate. I
just think it slightly edges it because of all of the factors involved.
I mean, take nothing away. It was an amazing overtake. It wasn't even his first amazing overtake of the day, by the way.
No, because didn't he go around the outside of someone through Bruxelles? All the way, which is nuts.
Yeah. Safe to say that you're not on your own, Jonty, but you're maybe predominantly on your own. But again, you are entitled to your opinion, so I'm not going to slate you for that at all. I hate people that do that. You are totally entitled to it, mate. And it's nice that you share it here and not on Twitter, where you'll get destroyed. But no, I think it was. But also you have to remember that Häkkönen's was for the win as well. Yeah. This is for a lot further down. I mean, I say that it's a win in the midfield, isn't it? He was going for, but it was a great move. He also had the one in at the bus stop where he's kind of going past Ricciardo and then has to go around the outside of, was it Latifi or Albon? I know if there's quite a big gap between Gasly and Vettel and Michael Schumacher, then there's an even bigger one between Latifi and Michael Schumacher. But no, I think Ocon was one of the racier drivers today, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching him out there. And whether it was one of the greatest moves of all time or not, it was still a bloody ballsy move to do that down the Kemmel Straight. 2 cars you're racing. Some great moves. I was impressed with Ocon today, and he's done himself no harm. And again, Fernando Alonso leaving the team, has a great weekend. Ocon comes out and also has a very, very good weekend as well with lots of action. So really impressed with Ocon today. I'm struggling to think to say on Fernando. Is there anything you want to add on Alonso today? I feel like he deserves a lot more praise than just he was out there, got the strategy right and got on with it. Or is it just an Alonso drive?
It was just an Alonso drive. That's about all you can say. It's mad that that's become a thing, but they are quite easily identifiable.
I'm going to poll it just because I'm interested. The other poll, by the way, is the Drivers' Championship over? Possibly the easiest question to answer. Yes, 86%, you never know. 10% and 3 saying no. This is on, Sean. This is going to be the greatest thing ever. So, the question is just simply choose. I know which way you're voting. Häkkönen, Zonta. Oh no, I will put Schumi because I can't bother to try and do that. Ocon. Who was it? Vettel. Gasly? I'll tell you what, I'll just put Hack and Ocon.
That's not fair. I can't make polls.
Choose Spa overtake. That's what I'll do. Choose best Spa. This is going to get longer. 3 hours later, Sean's written an essay. Choose the best Spa overtake. Hakkinen on Schumacher or Ocon's today. You know, if you're watching, you know what it means. So,
well, that's a bit vague. If you're saying best Spa overtake, then I'd say Webber on Alonso through Eau Rouge.
Okay, fine. I'm not adding any more, right? I'll say it. You know what it means if you're watching the stream. Best Spa overtake out of these two. Hakkinen with Schumacher Zonta or...
if like 2 other people
Ocon.
pick Ocon, I'll be happy.
Well, you've already got one, and that was probably you anyway, so... Suze is there voting away. No, yeah. I think Alonso great today. I will ask you actually, Jonty, what you made of his comments about Lewis Hamilton. I know afterwards in the pen, Alonso was a little bit more sort of like heat of the moment. He's taken responsibility, blah, blah, blah. Quite damning words over the radio. And again, I'll paraphrase it a little bit. He's sort of waving his hand around and saying, you know, this guy only knows how to race when he's P1.
Yeah, slightly unnecessary.
You can understand his anger.
And categorically false. How many times have we seen Lewis come through the field? Quite a lot.
Brazil last year, to name one.
Yeah, look at the sprint race, for God's sake. Half the laps to do it.
Yeah, it's not true. It's like people that say Vettel can't overtake. I just want to slap him. It's like, well, you obviously haven't watched F1 for more than 7 seconds then, because he can overtake. I always go back to a movie made at Rosberg in Australia through the old turn 8-9 chicane, I think it is, before you got onto the run to the boulevard to turn the super fast chicane. You know, Vettel can overtake. Abu Dhabi coming from the back or the pit lane or whatever to get into the top 3, you know.
Around the outside of Alonso through Curva Grande or first Lesmo, I can't remember which, with 2 wheels on the grass. You remember that one?
Yes, yeah. No, I can, yeah.
That was an insane pass.
I just don't think it's...
And, yeah, as Jamie Santos says, Germany 2019.
Yeah.
Hello, 20th to 2nd.
I'm not going to respond to a couple of people in chat who are having a shot who aren't listening to what's being said. I don't think it's funny that Alonso said it. I'm just making a point that it's heat of the moment, and I would always say that on radio calls. You have to ignore. It's like when Sebastian Vettel said what he said about Charlie Whiting, the late great Charlie Whiting. Heat at the moment. I don't know why people
Mexico.
get so pissy about that. I know, and you probably do, Jonty. You're going to tell me off now, but heat at the moment, you know, these are racing drivers. And Alonso said what he said because Hamilton turned in on him. 100% Hamilton's fault. Alonso did have damage, by the way, front wing end plate damage on his left-hand side. So was carrying some damage. He said after the race that it wasn't affecting him too much. So, you know, it's heat at the moment.
That's a great stat from Derpy Mustard. Lewis has 43 wins from outside of pole. That's the record for the most. So, officially, by the statistics, he's the best at getting past people, logically.
It's a cool
because
stat.
you overtake to win.
Thank you to Armands, who, by the way, is a Fernando Alonso fan, I suspect. Says Fernando Alonso is unbelievably 233 points behind Max Verstappen. Hate to say it, but I think the championship is sadly over. Oh, next year, mate. Next year. You never know with Aston. Thank you very much. And thank you to Andrew as well. Did you see Alonso waving his finger at Lewis when he went by on lap 2? Man lives for the chaos. Thank you so much for your super chats. I didn't see that. I didn't.
No, I did. Oh, he's always got a finger waggle for someone.
For everything.
Pretty sure he's done one in every race at this point. But don't worry, Super Chatter. You know, there's 216 points still left.
Yeah, it's still. Well,
so
no. You can't.
208. 208 points left, so he can still take second.
I did write down how many points there were left, and I've forgotten, but it's 200 and something. But yeah, so you never know. You never know. Fernando could surprise them. We might get some bonus sprint race in there as well. So yeah, let's move on before we get any deeper into this. Sebastian Vettel P8, Lance Stroll P11 for Aston Martin. Really good day for Seb. I've got to say, again, just the way it happens sometimes after announcements about drivers retiring and moving on and things like that. Really good race today from him. Kind of fairly quiet for chunks of it. But he was consistently running inside the points. Again, a bit like Alonso, just strategy worked. Really nice switcheroo, as Crofty calls it, on Gasly at turn 1, but that kind of all went wrong, and that's where we got to the 3-wide Gasly, Ocon, and Vettel moment. But he soon got back through past, I think it was Gasly he overtook a little bit later.
Yeah.
A couple of corners later, so soon did that. One thing I will mention on Seb, little squeeze on his teammate at the exit of turn 5, the exit of the first part of Les Combes. On that opening lap, putting Lance a couple of wheels in the gravel. That will have been squeaky bum time, I think, for the people at Aston Martin, but no harm, no foul, if you like. See, that's the kind of thing that if that happens on lap 2 or 3, 4, 5, whatever, later in the race, then you may be looking at a penalty or giving the position back or whatever. But lap 1, that's always going to happen, isn't it? Somewhere like that. You've got cars side by side, something's got to give. And today it was Lance Stroll, but I mean, I'm not going to say it destroyed Stroll's race. He was 11th. He was only 1.1 off the points. So, and actually Lance Stroll was kind of always in the action as well, wasn't he, today? Every time he cut to that midfield, he was in that DRS train that was Albon. Ricciardo was in there. Norris was in there as well. I think Tsunoda was in there for parts of it too. Zhou. There was that little DRS train there, and Stroll was sort of in and about that, wasn't he? So, I actually did get points today, Stroll, but I think he did all right. I think he had a good race, but I was really impressed with Seb today. I don't know why. It's one of those races that maybe people look at and go, really? And then you watch the race back and go, oh no, yeah, to be fair, he was all right. He did a good job today. Did our Seb.
Yeah, and weirdly, he wasn't very happy with today. He feels they could have got much more.
Was the pace? Really think the pace was there?
Yeah, and he had. I saw comments from an interview on Sky Germany where he really thought there could have been a lot more out of this race, which is odd. I think they did about as much as they could hope for. You know, when you consider who's ahead of them.
Yeah.
And you know, he's actually looked out with Lewis being out of the race as well. So maybe he's just eager to get as much as he can before leaving.
Yeah, he said his press release, 8th is a solid result. I was a little bit unlucky with the timing of the second stop. I came out just behind Pierre Gasly and lost a lap behind him, which allowed Esteban Ocon on the new tyre to close down the advantage I built up during the middle stint. Once again, we were more competitive in the race than in qualifying. We started strongly and I managed to find a decent rhythm. I was able to put pressure on both the Alpines and think 7th might have been possible, but they were a bit too fast for us today. But we will bank these points. They're good points for Aston, actually. Kind of, unless something crazy happens with Williams, that kind of guarantees them P9 though, and they are definitely in the hunt for P... I think they've got a shot at Haas in 7th, Aston Martin in the championship. They are. Haas have got 34 points, Aston 24. There's 10 points in it. They're 5 behind Alpha Tauri, so I think they've got a shot at that. But yeah, interesting. He thinks he could have got more today, but I still think it's a really good result from Seb today. So it was just nice to see him up there and not trundling around at the back.
Yeah, it's what we want to see for the rest of the season. Actually, him being far enough up to make appearances on camera.
Yeah. Lance Stroll, by the way, just while I got the press release up, said it was a tricky day out there today and we were so close to picking up a point. Things did not quite work out for us as we had hoped. Losing some positions early on made it tough, but we had some fun battles out there within the midfield. Later in the race, we got stuck in the DRS train behind Alex Albon's Williams, and ultimately we came up just short. Our race pace was positive, however, and we are extracting good performance from the car when it matters most. And this is the thing for Aston, isn't it? Their qualifying pace, I mean, yesterday, you know, all the penalties gave them a really good starting position today. But on a Saturday, the pace doesn't seem to be there. But for a team like Aston, whilst they'd love to have better qualifying pace, the most important point is they've got a race car underneath them that can pick up those tail end of the points. I'm also just trying to think back to my predictions. Shaw's just realised something. I think I got something right. I think I said Seb top 8 this weekend. Oh, get the fireworks out and the confetti. I think Sean's got something right. Somehow. I think I picked Verstappen for the win as well, so 2 things. But yeah, just as long as they're getting points on a Sunday, they're not going to complain too much, but they just need that qualifying pace. But I'm fascinated by Aston Martin as a team very quickly because they've got so much ambition. They've got the money behind them. They've got new facilities being built, facilities being upgraded, and now they've gone and bought in Fernando Alonso. And I think that's fascinating. That's going to be so much fun next season. Just have a quick look actually and see if there's anything on Stroll I can add. It's a nice move outside turn 5 on Gasly. Better traction than Ricciardo out of turn 1. Stroll did try the outside at Eau Rouge. Bottled it. Good shout, I think. Second pit stop onto the hards, but kept behind Latifi is all I've got for him. But yeah, that attempt he was about to make on Ricciardo, I was like, no, Lance. Part of me was screaming, go for it. And the other part was like, mate, just tuck in and try a little bit later because that could have been pretty disastrous. We do like a move at Eau Rouge, don't we, Jonty?
No.
Yes, you do. You love it. You love it. You just said that Webber on
Alonso
was great.
Love it by hating it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing, but God, it's like, no, just stop.
Like the track at Jeddah, it's a great track to watch the cars around, but you're clenched all the time.
Yeah.
And
it was even worse. It was even worse this morning with the F3 and the F2. Bunch of nutcases.
They are the crackers, aren't they? We love them, though. We love them. To do Williams in this part, we'll do Williams in this part. No, we'll do AlphaTauri because they're not on the list, Sean. You'll do AlphaTauri next because Pierre Gasly was P9, Yuki Tsunoda P13. We've talked a little bit about Gasly with what was going on there in that battle with Vettel and Ocon. Electrical issue is why he started from the pit lane. Sure.
Yeah.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Pitted at the end of lap 10 for the hards. Second stop, end of lap 22 for the mediums. He wasn't he, caught up with Albon and Ricciardo and Stroll, but that second stop he undercut the lot of them. So I wanted to mention this, a really good strategy shout from AlphaTauri. Got him in, got him on fresh rubber, jumped that train of cars, which ultimately, just looking where they are, got him P9 today. So really great shot. And can I just say as well, pit lane to points. I mean, come on, Pierre, brilliant.
Yeah, pit lane to points in a convincingly lower midfield car. Can't argue with that.
No. Great result. Great result from Pierre today. Really impressed with him. I was reading several of his press release it's come through. See if there's anything he wants to add on that one. Amazing. It's his 100th race as well. So congratulations there for him. So look at that. 100th race. Pit lane to points. Couldn't have done much more, could he? So really surprised with how we finished after having to start from the pit lane to come back home in the top 10 is incredible. So we should be happy with that. We were obviously lined up on P8 on the grid, but had an issue which Mendy had to return to the garage. Luckily, we got the car started and were able to begin the race from the pit lane. Car isn't quite where we want it to be yet. We've still got some areas we need to work on, but I'm pleased we managed to get back scoring points again today. And Yuki Tsunoda, starting from the pit lane was always going to be tough, but I think the pace was strong and we had a good strategy, being able to make our way forward during the race. Unfortunately, we had lost quite a lot of time in the pit stops. I think he did have a slow stop. It's in my notes somewhere. 9.7 second stop. So that's why Yuki was quite a way off. And then he got stuck in the DRS train, but pretty happy with how he drove today, is what he's saying, and how the car felt. Hopefully, we can maintain the performance we found this weekend in the Netherlands alongside a clean race weekend. He is once again going to aim for points. So that's a good point on Yuki. I didn't really have much to say on him, but a 9.7 second stop in a midfield that is separated by sod all. I mean, what? Vettel 2.4 behind. Why am I looking there? Albon was 1.1 clear of Stroll, who was 1.6 clear of Norris, who was 4/10 clear of Tsunoda, a 9.7 second stop. Well, what's that? Nearly probably 7 seconds longer than it should have been, Jonty. So you're instantly putting him up in. Well, you're putting him 10th. He picks up a point.
Yeah, exactly. Can I answer the question?
Which question?
DJ Red Raven.
Oh,
what was the actual issue with the AlphaTauri if it wasn't electrical? It was ahead of Max on the grid. Both of them. That's all.
But actually, yeah. Go
on. I know it's all conspiratorial and what have you, but if anyone doesn't think that's what happened, then I've got a bridge to sell you.
The thing is, the conversation about B teams comes up a lot, and I think there is a lot of merit to, or a lot of good arguments for having teams like Mercedes, Ferrari having a proper outright B team, a little bit like Red Bull have with AlphaTauri. The problem is what we potentially saw, again, tinfoil hat on, but what we potentially saw with both of those cars been pulled in the pit lane to allow the number one driver to gain a couple of places on the grid, potentially, I'll make that point clear, that's one of the reasons against it. Because you very quickly have a great qualifying performance from Ferrari B, Red Bull B, and Mercedes B, and then all of a sudden they've all got to start from the pit lane because they need new engines. A la, I don't know, the breaking of Massa's seal at Cota to get Fernando on the right side of the grid. You can still do it with your other drivers, but that's a big argument against B teams. But again, there's no confirmation that was the case. Yuki needed a new power unit according to AlphaTauri, and there was an issue with Pierre's car that meant he had to start the pit lane. So that's the official line.
Yeah, I mean, and Red Rev, you're right. It's complete overkill, but that's how Red Bull do things right now. They have become, I'd say, what Ferrari was during Michael's dominance. They are not missing any trick, any opportunity to ensure the victory. They will do everything, and why shouldn't they?
Well, that's why they're about to win their 5th constructors title and their 2nd drivers title in a row. You know, any team would do the same. I mean, people would argue Russia a few years ago when Bottas was told to get out of Hamilton's way. Did they need to do that? Because yes, Vettel was closing in at the time, but the championship was not over, but it was as good as over at that stage. It wasn't as over as it is now, but Vettel had a lot of work to do. Did they need to make that call? But they did, and any team would do the same in the same position. And that's what any team would have done today, I think, or are doing this season. I can't sit here as a Michael Schumacher fan and criticise Red Bull for that. It's absolutely. I've always said, I am going to be streaming some more F1 Manager this coming week, and you will see when one of my drivers, Ricciardo or Norris, or our drivers, Ricciardo or Norris, get clear in the championship. When we win it, inevitably, which we won't, then I will have a number 1 and number 2. I've always said I'd run my team like that if I had a Formula One team. It works.
I'm just going to interrupt proceedings and throw a yellow flag.
Okie dokie. I will spin on then I'll answer a couple of questions on this chat before we get to that point. Have a look at some of your points before we roll on. Again, just to be clear, that is just a conspiracy theory. I'm not saying that's what happened with AlphaTauri and Red Bull, but you know, it's one of those things that probably didn't happen, but wouldn't be a total surprise to most people. So there we go. Most boring race of the season so far, says Bruce. I'm not even going to try Bruce and think of anything worse than that one. I am a brutal team owner, Nick, I'm afraid. I absolutely would be. There you go. One more or a couple more comments before we roll on. Yuki was solidly in 7th until AlphaTauri cocked up his pit strategy. Thank you very much, Brian. That is, I think I've covered that bit, but thank you for reiterating that point for me just to make sure I wasn't going crazy. This is just what Gasly needed, says James, which is a fair point. Yeah, good result. He's had a shaky season, but the car's not really great either, is it, this season? So, to be fair to them. And Nick says it. And if Aston finish P9, they'll get a ton of CFD time next year. So there we go. Aston. I mean, they could do P9. Let's move on though to Williams, I believe. Yes. Sorry, I'm just trying to check my thingy, my little running order that I've got written down. So Williams. I mean, fabulous weekend for Alex Albon. Don't you reckon, chat? Absolutely fantastic weekend for Alex Albon. Qualified in Q3 on pace, which was great to see, which is fantastic from him. Started 6th on the grid, I think it was, Jonty. In the end, P6.
Yeah.
Did go backwards a little bit, but despite the fact that car isn't in a great place, 10th place and a point. I mean, I'm really impressed with Albon this weekend. And this season, actually. I think he surprised a few people. I will be cautious and just point out the fact that he is destroying his teammate, but that teammate is Nicholas Latifi. And if he got a more competitive teammate next season, it'd be fascinating to see whether he continues that. But I think he's been great this season and a great weekend overall. Was involved. He was the leader of that DRS train. Bless him, but did a cracking job. Just having a quick look through my notes. Pitted on lap 10, put the hard tyres on. Was racing quite nicely with Ocon, but then did make a mistake. Locked up at turn 1 on lap 20. He went wide there, which allowed Ocon to get the run and get through on him. But I think ultimately for Williams today, first of all, I don't think he would have held Ocon off without the lockup. But secondly, that Williams was slippery. They set that thing up perfectly, Jonty, for this one.
Yeah, and they've been quick through the speed traps most of the year, to be fair to them. Even more so since the B spec that they introduced on has Latifi got the B spec now?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, I'll double check.
Although
yeah,
I wouldn't
so.
be surprised if there's some bits that still aren't quite the same, but whatever. They've been quick through the speed traps, even more so when the B spec came in. So I wouldn't be surprised if this weekend was something of a test with ultra low downforce wings ready for Monza. I've been saying it a lot on Twitter, but with that maximum speed that they're getting, Monza could really be a massive surprise. Because let's be honest, in reality, it's got 4 corners, 2 chicanes, Lesmo 2, Parabolica. Everything else is basically a kink. So that could... I'm very, very excited to see what could happen.
Yeah, I think they've got... I don't see them closing the gap, or not close the gap. I don't think catching the cars ahead, but I can see them getting themselves to double points this season if they can keep setting it up like they did this weekend and getting it right for the circuit, and if these upgrades have worked well, I can see Albon getting that team to double points. It's going to need a bit. It's going to take a bit of work. I know it will. It's 6 points he'd need to do that, but we've got some races coming up. You think of things, we've already talked about Singapore. Anything can happen there with it being a street track. We've not been to Japan for 300 million years, it feels like. So that's all not new, but it's going to feel new, isn't it, for a lot of people? Brazil, anything can happen with weather. So a few crashes, bit of drama, get the car right. You've said Monza, Jonty. I think you bang on with that one. It's going to be great to see them there. They could pick up double points this season, but get a bit ahead of myself there, maybe. I don't know. But I just was really impressed with him this weekend, and I think he couldn't have done much more. Looking at my notes, apart from the lockup, which again, I don't think that would have made any difference to keeping Ocon behind. I think Ocon would have had him on the Kemmel straight anyway with the DRS, but
yeah,
he kept Stroll at bay, he kept Norris at bay, Tsunoda, Zhou. I mean, I'm just looking at the DRS trains. Albon, I said it before, 1.1 clear of Stroll, who was 1.6 clear of Norris, who was 4 tenths clear of Tsunoda, who was a second clear of Zhou, who was 9 tenths clear of Ricciardo. So he kept all them at bay, thanks to that slippery Williams. Just a great team call and great driving as well. So yeah, I've got nothing that I can say that's negative about it.
So I can't be sure. I'm actually looking at that photo that's on the stream right now, and that's a different rear wing to what Albon was running. I'm sure it is.
I've got the press release. I'll just have a quick skim through Dave Robson.
Like massively different.
So Albon said this was one of... Go on, sorry, Jonty.
No, if you just look at the images, Albon's rear wing got a massive scoop out of the upper flap.
Yeah.
I'm sure one will come up in a minute.
I'm just trying to think as well. I can go back to that other picture, but I'm just trying to think as well. With respect, I don't think Latifi would have done much.
No.
If he had the same one, but yeah, no.
No, but something like that on a track like Spa, with everything down the the run all the way from turn 1 down to Les Combes will make a massive difference to lap time. That's got to be sort of 3 or 4 tenths.
So Albon said this was one of the tougher races I've done in my career, and also one of my personal bests. We did the best job we could today, and it's a good feeling. On the lap to the grid, it was clear that tyre degradation was going to be really high, so he knew on the lap to the grid, and hotter track temperatures than we have had the rest of the weekend made tyre wear worse. Final stint was thinking about 3 stopping, but held on, kept Stroll behind, and then it was about not making mistakes. As a whole, we executed the weekend from FP1 onwards well, maximised the positives of our car, being quick on the straights, and made no mistakes, which of course is important. As a team, we had a complete weekend, and that's what it shows. When you don't have the fastest car, but you do everything right, you can still come away with a point or two. Absolutely. Absolutely bang on. And Nicholas Latifi says, I went a little bit offline in turn 6. There must have been a lot of marbles from the junior categories, and I understeered right off. It felt like driving in the wet on slicks. It dipped the wheel in the gravel, and it spun the rear round, which caught me by surprise quite a lot. I thought I would go straight into the gravel and come back on slowly, but instead I spun across the track as a result and made contact with Bottas. My race was compromised from there, as that set of tyres were needed to make the 2-stop strategy work, but were damaged. One to forget, he says. Yes, out Latifi. Well, he said it there. Lost it, dipping his wheels, spun it, came across the track, caught Valtteri Bottas. An accident, actually, that could have been a hell of a lot worse. So I feel for Valtteri, but that could have been a lot. I mean, look at what happened. I know very different circumstances, and Grosjean was a plonker, but look at what happened when Grosjean came back across the track in Spain a few years ago. It could be quite a nasty accident. So glad that everyone was okay, and glad it was only just a tag. It also answers my question mark. I wasn't going to bring it up, but I did wonder if Ocon had made contact with Latifi at turn 2 on lap 2 for that spin, because they were quite close. But no, is the answer to that. Latifi confirmed it was just a mistake. So yeah, could have been a lot worse, Jonty, but explains why he's 7.6 seconds behind Mick Schumacher in the end and last.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and so Bottas was so unlucky there. I mean, he had two choices: hit him or go off, and unfortunately, the going off stuck him in the gravel, and it just came up sighted canvas. He did try to get out of the gravel, but it bogged down straight away.
Raoul is surprised there was no penalty for that. in Raoul's defence, it's Latifi's mistake, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's not the first lap either. It's the second lap incident.
Yeah, a penalty for that wouldn't be harsh.
Weird. Yeah, no, I didn't even think at the time that about penalties, but yeah. No, Raoul's got a point there. Leave that with me. I'll think about that. I might put that to you later in the poll.
Yeah, lap 1 thing.
It's lap 2 though, wasn't it? It was the second lap.
Yeah. Also, previous image, it was a different rear wing. Massively different. It's like someone's taken a friggin' axe to it.
Alf in chat. A little football reference. Seen them given. Yeah, we've seen them given. We have, definitely. Great point. McLaren, I think, are next. Yes, they are. McLaren. Weird one.
There you go. That's their weekend.
Crap. Yeah, I mean, I'll read you through the notes and then we'll talk about them. Anything we want to say, and I'll come to chat as well if we need to. Norris finished P12, Ricciardo P15. Again, Ricciardo right on the back of that DRS train. Norris stuck slightly further up in the DRS train, but still in the DRS train. Pitted, end of lap 13 for the hards, stuck on the back of the Albon DRS train. Second stop was lap 29 for the mediums. It was 3.2 was his stop, but he did undercut Daniel Ricciardo because he pitted first. So he did undercut Ricciardo, who was at one point going quite nicely in the points. So, yeah, didn't really work out at the end. And Ricciardo himself pitted end of lap 32 for the hards. Was caught in the fight with Latifi. Did go off the track through Blanchimont and on the run to the bus stop. And that is when Ocon made his nice move around the outside of the bus stop as well. Caught up behind Slippery Albon, as I've called him. In fact, I'm writing that down in another page because that is now his nickname for this weekend and for Monza, Slippery Albon. That's what we're going to call him. Second pit stop, end of lap 32, but came out behind Tsunoda, and that was kind of it, really. I don't know what to say on McLaren because I was hoping they were going to take strides forward. I was hoping for a really great fight with Alpine this weekend and a great fight between now and the end of the season for that that top of the midfield spot, P4 in the championship. But Alpine seem to be moving forward really, really nicely, and McLaren seem to be going backwards a little bit. I know difficult when you're stuck in a DRS train, but you know, with the greatest respect to Ricciardo and Norris, others got through and they didn't. So is this about where McLaren are pace-wise at the moment, or could it be track-specific? We've seen a few times this year McLaren are very track-specific sometimes, aren't they, performance-wise?
Yeah, it could well be that. I mean, I'd have to go back through the results and look at where they've been strong. It's the whole year's just been really weird for them. They've been up and down so much. Start of the year it was like, what have they brought to the track? Is that an actual tractor?
Mm.
It's that slow. And then a couple of races later, and they're well into Q3 fighting for the podium, and then they're down again, and then it's a long time since we've seen a team that wild have that wild of a swing between suiting tracks. I mean, the last one was probably Williams themselves back in with Valtteri and Massa. When it was the high-speed rocket ship, and then pretty awful around tight corners. It's always as if McLaren are the opposite of that. They seem to have some decent downforce and then get left sleeping on the straights.
It's funny because when you look at the season results, they're not having a horrific year. It's just, I think part of it is that Alpine have just been so consistent. I mean, I said it in the preview again. Apart from Ocon's DNF at Silverstone, they've had both cars in the points every race since Baku. And they've done it again this weekend, whereas McLaren, when you look at their results, they've only had both cars in the points three times since Baku. So yeah, I think they're having a terrible season. It's just that they're not having as good a season as Alpine. So they're looking, but they just feel, I'm like you, they're all over the place. A bit like me. I'm all over the place. Some weekends they think, oh, they're really strong, and then they fall away in the race or whatever. And then other races, they're just absolutely nowhere, and they were just nowhere today. And I think that's frustrating. Again, Ricciardo was running quite nicely in the points at one stage. I thought maybe he'd pick up something, and I'm just looking through the DRS train. Perhaps Norris gets past Stroll, can get Albon as well and go on after points. Maybe he could have taken the fight to Gasly, but this is what I'm saying about strategy and why AlphaTauri played a blinder. They pulled Gasly in. They saw where that DRS train was going, and that DRS train was going nowhere. Got him in, undercut the lot of them. Should McLaren, we're criticising Ferrari's strategy. Should McLaren have Norris undercut Ricciardo. Should they maybe have looked at Gasly and gone, shit, get him in now, and then get out there and get on with it? They'd have come out about where Gasly was, so...
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair shout. We always talk about, running your program and being on the right side at the right time and all the rest of it, but the other side of that is being reactionary. If people you're racing are doing something, you've got to respond to it, whether that's by also coming in straight away or by going longer to change the strategy completely, or just push for a couple of laps to try and balance it out. They didn't really seem to try anything to counteract what people around them were doing, other than Norris undercutting his teammate. They beat themselves. Well done.
That's something. It also has to be mentioned as well that, as we saw with the DRS being so OP, today was all about that straight, as Albon proved as well. And the straight line speed wasn't... as Lustra's saying in chat there, McLaren had no straight line speed at all today. So they were kind of sitting ducks in a way. And that makes sense because they couldn't get past in the DRS train, which is tough anyway. But bit of straight line speed, again, as Albon proved, as others have proven as well, makes a difference. I mean, Mercedes didn't have great straight line speed either, but... very well. I'm going to see what chat say about McLaren. Then we are going to really try and fly through, because there isn't a lot to say, to be honest, about the others. Alfa, Romeo, and Haas, and then we'll get on to driver of the day, Q&A, and all of that business. A couple of people talking about Piastri. It does make you wonder what he sees in McLaren, or what McLaren have told him about next year that they've got planned. Because right now, and I said it when all this was going off, that if I was picking a team, right now it'd be Alpine, but that's not with long term in mind. Maybe he's thinking long term. I don't know. We're not going to talk about driver transfers till later. If we do, we'll answer some of the questions. But I'm a Ricciardo fan. I just want the pain to end, says Julius. I wonder where he'll end up next year. Leave it, Sean. Yeah. Leave it.
You know my thoughts.
Yeah, I know your thoughts. I'm miles behind on the stream, but I too will say McLaren should be ashamed of their performance. And they're my favourite team, says Tacitus. Yeah, chat, not giving McLaren much love here, but a few explanations. Raul says McLaren has drag and that Mercedes engine isn't overpowered anymore, which is fair. McLaren is having a mental block at the moment on and off track, it seems, as cited Canvas. I'm sorry, I was going to call you Rolf, but that is not what it says. Roll F1231. I'm so sorry. It says McLaren does not get enough criticism. Regal Grand Sport says McLaren's new wind tunnel is supposed to be done at the end of the year or next. I think I heard they have been using Toyota's wind tunnel up until now. Leave that with me.
Couldn't say.
I honestly couldn't say no.
I did know. I'm completely forgotten because it hasn't come up.
And one more. McLaren were nowhere, says Sarah. People saying as well they were surprised there wasn't a penalty for the incident with Latifi and Bottas as well. Yeah. I've got nothing to add on McLaren, I'm sorry. So I'm going to roll straight on to Alfa Romeo and then we'll get on to Haas. Bottas, we've already talked about it. Wiped out by Latifi. Nothing he could have done, Valtteri, at all. So, I mean, not that there's always someone to blame, but nothing there. Just tried to avoid the incident, got hit. Game over, beached it in the gravel, as you can see there on the picture. So, kind of gutting for Valtteri. P13 today. Would have been interesting to see what they could have done pace-wise. In fact, I'm going to tell you what they feel. So Bottas said, Valtteri Bottas, we had pace today, and with such a mixed-up grid, there could have been opportunities to get a good result. So it was disappointing to finish my race so early. It was a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's a great way to sum it up. I saw Latifi spin towards me, towards the left, and all I could do was take evasive action to avoid contact. Unfortunately, I spun on the grass and ended up stuck in the gravel. Tried to go forward and back, couldn't move. It's not the birthday present I wanted. Was it Valtteri's birthday today? Oh, Nicholas.
Oh, did you not know that?
That is unacceptable. Right, I'm firing Latifi. That's it. I've had it. No, that... Oh, well, happy birthday, Valtteri, anyway. Or birthday, because it wasn't very happy, was it? And Joe says our pace was quite all right today. And despite starting from the back due to the penalty, the race has been quite exciting. Typo. With lots of action going on. Unfortunately, I got stuck behind a Williams train towards the end of the race. Yeah, not much there really, other than what we've already kind of touched on. Obviously wanted more from today, but we sacrificed this weekend for the engine change. Hopefully, in the coming races, we can start further up on the grid and score some good results. Only note on Joe is back past Tsunoda on lap 43. I don't know what that means. He overtook Tsunoda on lap 43. I think Tsunoda passed him and then he got back past him. We didn't see how. So, yeah, a good point, actually. They're taking the engine penalty now for Joe and for Bottas. So that's done, isn't it? So at least hopefully they can go to the end of the season. I know that Ferrari engine would blow up again in a week. Yeah, I mean, anything you want to say now for Jonty? I've got nothing, mate.
No, I mean, cause there wasn't much to say because for the reasons you've gone over. Although I'm surprised you didn't know it was Valtteri's birthday. The teams did tweet it out. Alfa said, happy birthday, Valtteri, have a peachy day or something, obviously reference to his photos. And Mercedes said, to whom it may concern, happy birthday.
Fair enough. It's because I hate him, obviously, isn't it? I'm so anti-Bottas. I don't even know when it's his birthday. How bad's that? Yeah. Haas, I mean...
They were there.
Yeah, literally nothing. I've got literally nothing on them, so I'll read you what Gunther Steiner said. On a high-speed track where we need low drag, our car is just not good enough this year. We'll try to make it up next week in Zandvoort, where the car should be better suited to the racetrack, like in Austria and Silverstone. K-Mag said it was frustrating not to have any... Sorry, Mick Schumacher said it was frustrating not having any top speed compared to the cars around us, but it's great to be here and be driving in front of so many people, some German as well. I think it was a circuit-specific thing that we struggled this week. And K-Mag said this type of track isn't really our track, so we tried what we could, but didn't really have the pace today. All in all, it hasn't been the best of weekends. I'm looking forward to the next race. They were Magnussen 16th. He was 8.3 behind Ricciardo, and Schumacher was 17th, 2.8 behind his teammate. So Haas, from what they've said there, Jonty, track specific, hopefully better for Zandvoort, but doesn't bode well for Monza, to be fair, either.
No, although all this we've talked about being track specific across various teams, we're actually at a really, really good point in the season, and they've changed the order to suit this really well. So we've got Spa, high speed, low downforce, then Zandvoort. It's quickish, but it's got a lot more twisty stuff. You know, there'll be a fair amount of downforce there. Then Monza, then Singapore. So it's going to be really easy to follow the patterns now. If we see Mercedes, McLaren, and Haas doing a lot better next week, and then being crap again the week after, there's definitely something to it. We can answer our own questions that we've been coming up with.
I'm going to spin on. I feel bad. I feel like I want to talk about Haas for a bit, but sighted canvas. On the plus side, Haas has 2 full cars at the end of the race. No damage. Cheeky. Driver of the day.
Achievement with Mick, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. Poor Mick. Anyway, I'm going to do this. Driver of the day. Let me know in chat, who is your driver of the day? One surname, I'll read a few out. Max Verstappen got the official one. Jonty, who have you got for this week? I've got a list of about 32. Which is an achievement, because only 20 drivers.
Felipe Drugovich.
No. F1 driver of the day. It's trickier than you think, in some ways.
I can't not say Max. That was an absolutely dominant, destructive, take the field and kick the crap out of everyone drive.
Yeah. I've put down a lot of nominations in no particular order. Verstappen, Ocon, Vettel, Gasly, Alonso, and Albon. I think maybe not outright driver of the day, but I wanted to mention them because I think all of them deserve a shout out for their performances today and over the weekend. In the case of Albon, possibly driver of the weekend. But I like to usually pick a different one, but I can't not pick Verstappen. He went from 14th on the grid. Yes, he's got clearly the fastest car, but he went from 14th on the grid, overtook when he needed to overtake, and as I said in my notes earlier, overtook Sainz for the lead and then puppied off. That was it. Game over. I can't not pick him, so it has to be Verstappen.
Yeah, it's not the case of he's got the fastest car. You expect him to go from 14th on the grid and win. It's the fact that he went from 14th to first in 12 laps.
Yeah. Plus, fastest car or not, you still got to do it. Ferrari had the fastest car earlier in the season and weren't doing it, were they? We've seen that before with teams, so still got to deliver it. Yeah. That's my pick. It has to be Verstappen. But like I say, shout-outs to Ocon, Albon, Vettel, Gasly and Alonso as well. I think pit lane to points is impressive. Alonso, really strong today. Ocon, great overtaking as well from him. Vettel, consistently running in the points in a car that's not the best. Albon, fantastic all weekend. There's been some great performances in Belgium, actually. And I think that's fair. So I've got to go with Verstappen. So what's chat saying? I expect a lot of Albano in here, if I'm being honest.
Yes.
Built 2JZ Lexus says Albon. Nick says Albon. Raul says Max, Gasly, Ocon in that order. Andy says Alonso. Edwin's gone with Ocon. Brad says Albon. Sighted Canvas says Lord Latifi. Professional Moron says Albon. Doe says Albon. Dinin says Ocon or Albon. Felix says Alonso for being him. Gardner the Blind said it's Max. His pace was ridiculous. It was ridiculous, wasn't it? The fact that the bookies would say it was P14 and put him down as favourite to win, I think tells you all you need to know about where we are right now. Michael says Verstappen and Albon. Giles says Mick had a good overtake through Eau Rouge on Latifi. I'm guessing that's not to do with the driver of the day, but that's a good point, actually. Yes, he did make a move on Latifi in Eau Rouge. Thank you very much for the reminder there. CPB says Verstappen. Julie says Albon. Lucas has gone with Gasly. James has gone Albon. Nick's gone with Max. Seb, best driver of the day, says Paul. Halo Gamer says Kimi Raikkonen. Nebula says Ocon. Scroll down a little bit further. Stoffel, obviously, of course. We know that one. Always. Jamie says Max or Ocon. I've seen your super chat, Jamie, by the way. Thank you very much. I'm saving that for Q&A, but thank you very much, mate, for that. I appreciate it. Klein says Max, Esteban for Zach. No, I'm going to read that again. Zachar says Esteban better than Hakkinen Ocon. That's his full name now. Alonso, Vettel, Ocon, Alonso deserve a shout out as well. Absolutely. Is it Tho22? Thank you very much. Pascal says Joe or Albon. Ronnie says Albano. Two more. Sky says Verstappen, too good. And Freddie's gone with Sainz. I mean, to be fair, actually, Freddie, like we said earlier, Sainz hasn't done anything wrong today, has he? He's done everything he could, so that's fair.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say driver of the day, but yeah.
Gasly's mentioned a couple of times earlier. That's a fair shout. Like we've said, pit lane to 9th. 9th, 10th?
9th.
9th, yeah.
Pit to points.
Yeah. I mean, you can't argue with that. And like we said, back of the midfield car. So, yeah, it's a fairly fair. It's a pretty fair mix of choices.
No, I think, like I said, I think it's not. It's maybe clear who it should be, and maybe the public vote on that is correct. With it be Max Verstappen given his performance, but there were some really strong drives today and over the weekend, so it was a tough pick. Please do drop a like, by the way. We're 94 away from 500, so please do drop a like. Always appreciated. Don't forget to subscribe as well. Tons coming up over the next couple of weeks. There will be some more F1 Manager streams this coming week because I paid Lewis to make some thumbnails, so now I need to make that back. I'm joking. He did do the thumbnails, but yeah. So I will do some F1 Manager streams this coming week, and then it's the preview on Thursday, race reaction as well on Sunday, and then we're going to do it again for Monza. So there's loads coming up in the next few weeks. So
you're busy.
I am. I love it. I do some gaming as well on the channel, which is kind of fun. I really enjoyed that stream the other day. So please do subscribe as well. Like I said, please do drop a like. We're not far away from that 500 for Charles Edward Cheese. If you have any questions, please do pop them in the chat. I will come to a few of them before we wrap up today. Always good to get some questions in. Anything you like, it can be race specific, ideally F1 specific. For anyone who follows me on Twitter, I did get the remote back off the puppy in time to watch the Grand Prix. Bastard. But yes, I'm already one remote. I'll tell you a quick story. I've got a Sky box a little Sky mini box in my office, so I can watch the racing up here when it's quiet, when I need it to be quiet. And he got hold of the remote the other day when he was up here while I was working. Started chewing it. It turned the TV on. I nearly shit my pants. I thought I had a ghost. I was like, you little shit. Turning on my TV scared the life out of me. Anyway, Jamie, yes, thank you very much for your super chat. Says, welcome back, Sean and Jonty. Hope all is well. What do you think will happen to McLaren if Alpine wins the case? What is your reaction to Audi coming into F1? And more importantly, did the puppy give you the remote back? Yes, he did. I got the remote back, mate, as I say. So the McLaren Alpine case, on this one, even if Alpine win that case, I do not see Piastri in that car next year. I think even if they won that case, they will try to come to a settlement with McLaren to buy him out of that contract because they've used the Jenson Button example at BAR and Williams. Jenson Button obviously didn't really have Twitter then, did we? But Jenson Button didn't hop on Twitter and do that. And I think that it feels very different to that one. And having a driver who doesn't want to be there in a team some of whom may not want him there now after those comments, knowing your driver wants to go to your big rival in the constructors at the moment, I don't see that working very well. So I think that there'll be some kind of agreement. I mean, it may well be they're ruling in favour of McLaren. Dieter Renken said a couple of weeks ago that was probably what was going to happen. They would rule in favour of McLaren, but Otmar Safnauer seems to think that they have a concrete contract and it's all absolutely fine. But then a lot of what Otmar Safnauer said this weekend, in my opinion at least, didn't seem to add up, and there was at least one contradiction in there throughout the weekend that I sort of looked at and went, what are you talking about? What are you talking about, mate? And I think one point I will make, and I do want to make, Jonty, then I'll let you have a moan about it, but I this is so messy. We said it was going to get messy anyway, and it was messy at the time, but you've got Otmar Safnauer talking about other people's integrity, which is quite hilarious. And then you've got Zach Brown taking shots back, and then it's got really, really messy and really bloody petty. And I just hope that whatever happens on Monday, it just gets resolved one way or another, because it's not a good... It's got people talking, and some might argue that's great for F1, and Liberty might be loving it, but it doesn't look good on the sport. So that's my gut. Whichever way it goes, I still think Piastri will be in a McLaren next year.
Yeah, I think he will be. As for what will happen from the hearing, I have no idea. I really don't know how this can play out. If there's anything that can be done, if Alpine win the hearing, can that be a legal block put on any contract with McLaren?
Could be.
I don't know. I have no idea how the law on that kind of thing works, whether it is law or whether it's just within the sport. It all gets a bit silly. That's why I don't think there should be this contract recognition board. It complicates things whilst trying to simplify things. Do you know what I mean? The driver is their own entity. The team is another. If they come to a contract, you make a legal document, and then if there's a problem, you deal with it in a court. End of story. Presumably the court of whatever country the team is based in. It's not a difficult way to go about it. But now they're bringing all these with the contract recognition board, which isn't a truly legal body, and blah blah blah, and it's just like you said, it's a mess, but it's a hell of a lot more of a mess than it should be or even could be. And if it's just, I mean, it's fairly certain it's all coming down to money. Not everywhere, that much is obvious. But even if they ratified the Alpine contract and said, this is concrete, you have to be here, it's not going to happen. Like you've mentioned, can you imagine the atmosphere in that team? It would be impossible to work with.
I suppose what it boils down to on all of this is the specifics of the contract. To your point about them blocking a move to McLaren, if Piastri's contract is as watertight as Otmar Safnauer seems to claim it is, and it was signed back in November, at which point, by the way, why did you wait until Alonso left you to sign the contract? It was quite clear, by the way, Piastri was being used to try and get a better deal a better deal out of Alonso for Alpine, and Alonso was being used to try and get a better deal out of Alpine for Piastri, quite frankly. But it'll come down to the specifics. So if that contract is watertight, then in theory, there's nothing to stop Alpine blocking a move to McLaren and then saying to Oscar, sorry, you didn't want the race seat, we've signed somebody else. They could do that if his contract is with the academy and not with the team. This is what I mean. This is why it's messy. It's going to come down to very specific points in the contract.
Yeah.
They meet on Monday. I am not expecting an announcement on Monday. I wouldn't be surprised if this takes a few days. It could take a couple of weeks. It could. It could be announced on Tuesday morning. But it sounds to me like you've got Alpine saying they've got a watertight contract. McLaren obviously believes something different because of what's going on with Piastri. This feels to me like this could rumble on a little while yet. But whilst I sort of see what you're saying, I am glad somebody is getting involved outside of the two teams now to make the decision, because otherwise this could just get ridiculous.
Yeah, and
more ridiculous, sorry.
And presumably the key person on the McLaren side is Webber as Piastri's manager, right?
Mm-hmm.
If he's got this even slightly wrong, depending on how the legal framework goes around these contracts, it's highly unlikely, but it's not impossible to say that could end his career. Because if he's legally tied up with Alpine, they can quite happily just bench him. And by the letter of the law, there is nothing they can do about it. Because of how contracts can be worded. It can be a really serious thing. So they've really got to make sure they are absolutely right before fighting this so hard. I'm sure they have. I'm sure McLaren have certainly been helping and had their legal department in it, but that could be disastrous for Piastri.
I suppose it wonders as well. You have to wonder as well, from a McLaren standpoint, they must have had assurances from Webber and Piastri that he's not tied to Alpine, because I know McLaren like to sign every driver, but even whatever you think of Zach Brown, he doesn't strike me as somebody that will sign. I'm saying this with tongue in cheek, by the way. He doesn't strike me as the kind of person that would sign a driver that has a contract with another team. It's almost unheard of.
Yeah, exactly. That's the bit that gets me worried. Nick Service, Yeah, I doubt it'll get that bad. I'm just looking at the worst possible eventuality here, and that's the part that has me worried because it's not the first time. They did it only a couple of weeks before, and that has gone to court and has got extremely messy. And I still don't know what the full outcome of that is. It's very difficult to find many accurate details of exactly what's going on.
I suppose to kind of bring it back to the question, because we could go about this for ages. I mean, for example, look at some of the stuff we've heard this weekend. Oh, we something like we told him when he was in the simulator. Oh, professional. Like, what? You didn't sit him down?
Yeah, give me a minute.
And I can understand from Alpine's point of view, they're pretty annoyed because they've put a lot of money into Piastri's career. But I can also, and I don't know if I feel like I'm in the minority when I look at social media. I'm actually a little bit on Oscar's side with this, because if he was made assurances that he was going to get a race seat either at Alpine or with a team next year, and the team were playing games with Fernando's contract, he's not going to sit there thinking, well, you don't have a lot of faith in me here. Now, don't get me wrong. Short term, you're taking Alonso over Piastri every day of the week in that car. But, to then come along and say, we've got your seat, mate. We'd like Alonso to stay, but we've got you a seat. It'll be with Williams. Yeah, but McLaren are offering me a contract. McLaren want me. Who are you going to go with out of those two, Williams or McLaren? I kind of see it from his point of view, but I totally get why Alpine are annoyed by this. But I just think some of the comments made this weekend, particularly by Otmar Safnauer, weren't great. And it wasn't very... No matter how angry you are as the boss of a team like that, it's not very professional, is it, to be calling a driver's integrity into question when you maybe don't have all the facts?
Yeah.
I totally get that argument that, well, look at all the years he's been in our program and look at what he's doing to us. But if he's not been given the assurances by the team and his only offer is to go to a Williams and he's got McLaren knocking on the door, he might look for a way out of that contract. But the one thing I will say was confirmed. Safnauer said that the 31st of July clause was false. It was never a thing. This was signed in November last year. But it's all going to come down to whether that's with the team or with the driver academy. And I think that's when we could end up in a proper court, because how much can you separate a driver academy from a team is what it could come down to. And I don't know. My gut feeling is, get seen by Contract Recognition Board. We get an announcement in the next few days or in the next couple of weeks, and even if they rule in favour of Alpine, I think there will be a deal to be done. Because I tell you what, if they rule in favour of Alpine, Jonty, and Alpine refuse to allow McLaren to buy him out of that contract, McLaren have got a problem with one of their seats. And I'll see people say straight away, oh, this driver, that driver, what about him from IndyCar? What about him from the moon or whatever? But you've just publicly dropped your driver, potentially paid a lot of money to buy him out his contract on the hope you're putting Piastri in there. And if that suddenly stops, who are they going for? I mean, I'm going to tell you who they're going for, Pierre Gasly, but because everyone's going for that, because it sounds like he might be on the Alpine radar. But I wouldn't want to make that call. And I think McLaren maybe could have hung on with Danny Rick a little bit till they knew for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing, it causes issues for other drivers, the likes of Pierre Gasly, because he's watching all of this going on, thinking there's a seat at one of these available, and he's seeing the situation, thinking, do I want to work with these people? Would you?
No. I'm going to put a poll in chat as well in a second. I just want to read the results of this one. You're going to be thrilled, Jonty. So choose the best Spa overtake out of Hakkinen, Zonta, Schumacher, and Ocon, Gasly, and Vettel. 68% say Hakkinen, so 31% of 678 people, because they're mad, agree with you. Which sets alarm bells ringing straight away. So there you go, Jonty. You are not alone on that one. Not as alone as perhaps... you thought you were going to be.
210 people. I'll take that.
So the poll is very simple. It's not simple because it might take a bit of thought. Where will Oscar Piastri be next season? Is it A? I feel like I want to who wants me there. A, is it Alpine? B, McLaren. C, a reserve, so it could be at either team. No, that doesn't make sense. No, or I'm just going to put C, McDonald's. Somewhere completely different. I don't know. The McDonald's one is a joke, by the way, but just essentially saying he will be somewhere other than an F1 team next season. So there you go. He might be at McDonald's. It's an option for a year. But yeah, let's move on from that. I'll come back to that poll in a moment, see what people are saying in chat. Unless you've got anything very quickly to add, Jonty, on the chaos of
Alpine. No, but as someone pointed out in the chat, 31% on that previous vote. Socon's number.
It is. So it's rigged. There you go.
Yeah. Chat did it on purpose to make it come out as his number.
Someone else said 31% of people just started watching F1 today, though. So I'm sure it was a joke. Nick, thank you very much for your super chat. Says Sky Germany talks about doing for Alpine next year. Thoughts? Thank you very much, mate, for your super chat. Appreciate that. I think Doohan's doing a good job, but I'm going to be quite blunt. Way too early for Jack Doohan in F1. If they weren't willing to give Piastri a chance for this season, they're not going to give Doohan a chance for next season.
No, but fourth in the championship and has race win now. So I'm sure you would have the super license points.
Maybe. I don't know about super license points, but I think it feels that, like I say, if they were going to give a youngster a chance, they'd have put Piastri in the car for this year and they wouldn't have signed Ocon up long term. Or they wouldn't have messed about with Alonso. They'd have said, sorry, Fernando, mate, we're really impressed with Piastri. We're going to let you go and bring in Oscar for the long term. But they didn't. So I can't see how they're going to bring Jack Doohan in. The only debate, I suppose, the only other side to that is that they don't have Alonso there now and they need to fill that seat. So is it time to take a gamble? Might also be a bit of a finger to Piastri as well. Oh, Doohan's better than you. We're putting him straight in here.
Yeah, but Paul is in chat's already come on with it. I mean, if I was Alpine right now, I'd be looking at Drugovich. Because you can sign him up on the cheap because he's not affiliated with any driver academy right now. So there's none of that to mess about with. It's just, hey, F2 champion, want a seat? It could be really, really easy, probably one of the easiest driver deals that could ever be done. When was the last time we had a completely unaffiliated driver coming into F1? Like, unaffiliated in any way? It's got to be a long time.
Opius 11 makes an interesting point as well. Says all new talents in motorsport will now have to sign an extremely shitty contract because of all this with Piastri.
Yeah.
Good point, actually, yeah.
Yeah, that's an extension of what I was on about with, Gasly looking at the situation going, why aren't we involved in these? If it goes a bad way and ends up quite legally damaging to either side, they're quite right. It will make future contracts even more convoluted, far more tied up. It could make a big problem in the future.
Yeah, if you've got any questions, pop them in chat and I'll answer a few. But I'll just read some of your comments on this one while some more questions come in. Paul S. there, talking about Drugovich, you say, looking for a seat in F1. Zhou doesn't have a contract yet, which is true, but from what I think a lot of people in the paddock are really impressed with him, and I think Alfa are very impressed with him, so I can see him staying. But Mick Schumacher's also on the market, and Sauber are probably about to become Audi Sauber, or I hope Audi Sauber, like BMW Sauber. So possibly German driver Mick Schumacher could be available alongside Valtteri Bottas. Not an awful lineup at all. So they might look at him. That's also possibly an argument for AlphaTauri picking Mick Schumacher up if Pierre Gasly were to move to somewhere like Alpine, which a lot of people seem to think is not a done deal, but looking more and more likely now. Gasly to Alpine for an all-French lineup. Yes, and by the way, I know Gasly and Ocon apparently don't get on, but, if you don't get on, pull your head out your arse. You've got a race seat in Formula One, a competitive car in that midfield. You either get on with, if you can't get on with your teammate, then at least be bloody professional. So if people are not picking drivers because they might not get on, then those drivers maybe need to ask some questions. You could be. I've worked with so many people, if they're watching, I'm sorry, who I absolutely fucking despise, but I can still be professional and work with them. Very different environments, very different pressure, and I understand that, but you've got to be professional. So even if they hate each other, get on with it, is my argument. There you go. Daddy has spoken. Get on with it. So I think Mick Schumacher to AlphaTauri makes sense. I've seen, has Herta been linked? Is it Herta that's been linked to AlphaTauri as well this week? Possibly.
Well, Colton Herta was another one that was linked with McLaren.
Yeah. Well, they're all linked to.
Well, it was, depending on how things play out, there's potentially 4 Indy drivers. Because they've got Pato, they got Rosenquist, then there's Rossi, Herta, and Palou. So 5. In various ways. It's oh, for God's sake. Now AlphaTauri want to join in the party with signing Indy drivers. Can we just sack off all the driver contracts, right? And then we just have a driver job centre and the teams advertise and the drivers go and apply. Make it much simpler.
I think we're all linked to McLaren, aren't we?
In case you hadn't guessed, whilst enjoying the drama and the intrigue that goes around it, it gets a bit annoying after a while.
Yeah. Look, time will tell. It sounds like Gasly is one of the favourites to take that seat if they can't have Piastri in there, but I don't see why they want to put Piastri in there after all this. But again, though, and Jamie says they're grown men when they're talking about Ocon and Gasly, but at the same time, if this contracts board does rule in favour of Alpine, Piastri's a grown man. Does he just need to go in there, Jonty, and get on with it? Go in there and say, I don't really want to be here, but I'm going to prove that I'm a freaking superstar, and then when McLaren come for me in a year or 2 years' time, I'll move then. Use it as an incentive to get out, if you like.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a brilliant way for him to deal with it. It would be hard for him, but it would show a hell of a mature head and dramatically raise his future stock based on that. And if he can then also perform it on the track, he'll have all the other top teams battering his door down.
McLaren is like the Manchester United of Formula One. I'm going to say it's now that racing guy. We wondered 2 games in a row. We are well back. Yeah, we're on for mid-table.
Minus 3 goal difference.
Don't start. Don't come in here started. I've gone all bloody northern now. Look what you've done. Yes, okay. Minus 3 goal difference. That's all right. We did still beat Liverpool and just beat Southampton. Let's not get into or sending me northern. Let's not get back into football or going northern at all. I know we're not back. We're dreadful. Tactically brilliant against Liverpool, but we're still not where we, in air quotes, should be. Joey's actually doing what I would say is good enough to keep his seats, better than a regular pay driver. I think the thing is with Joe, very, very quickly on this, actually, very quickly, because I know stats don't always tell the story. He has 5 points to Bottas's 46. He is 17th in the table and Bottas is 10th. It'd be very easy to look at that and go, he's been dreadful. But actually, if you look at some of his DNFs and some of the things that have gone wrong for him in strategy and the pit lane and things like that, that doesn't tell the full story. And I think Joe has been better than his points tally would suggest.
Yeah. Yeah, he has had a lot of bad luck, like, problems with the car, Russell trying to yeet him into orbit.
Trying, he succeeded.
Yeah. He has had quite an unlucky year.
It's not been amazing, but also the gap to Bottas, you have to remember, Bottas has been around in F1 for a hell of a lot longer than Zhou. He's raced at Mercedes. That was always going to be tough for Zhou coming in. So I think he's earned a second season And given Porsche is now probably not going to win F2 this year, I think Sauber can relax a little bit. I think they can sort of look at it now and say, right, we'll give Zhou another year, see how he does, and then maybe look at moving Porsche up for 24. It just gives it a bit more flex. Because if Porsche wins F2, they've got a decision to make, haven't they? So at least that might work quite nicely for Zhou, the fact that Porsche is probably not... I mean, you never know. In F2 is a series where you never know. I think Zhou will stay another year. I don't buy the links of Zhou back to Alpine, because I said it the other week. If Alpine thought anything of Zhou, they wouldn't have released him from the academy. So I don't see him going back there. Mick Schumacher to Alfa is one I've seen, which I didn't give much thought to. But as I've already touched on, Audi Sauber, German link, possibly. But Audi aren't going to be until 24 anyway, with potential title sponsorship when Alfa leave. And they're not joining properly till 26. So why would they be worrying about a German driver now?
Unless Mick stays where he is, the only place he'll be going is a Ferrari development role, I think.
You don't buy into the AlphaTauri link?
No.
Or the Alpine link I've seen as well?
No, definitely not. As much as I would love for it to happen, he's shown he's not good enough.
I was just going to say, that's the question. Do you think he warrants another season at Haas?
Potentially, because even though it's only one Formula up, Formula One is miles away from F2.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? The difference between F3 and F2 is, an increase in speed, a little bit of increase in downforce. The jump from 2 to 1 is so much bigger. And we know Mick takes time to get up to speed. It took him a year and a half to really get up to speed in F2 and F3. So another season on that would be fair in F1. But I don't think F1 is the kind of place that gives that kind of time.
I think as well, there are still 8 races to go. But I can't help but feel like if Haas rated him that highly, they'd have signed him up by now. I know that Haas are in a very strong position because they can afford to sit back and wait now and see what happens in the driver market. But I feel like if they were totally happy with their lineup, they'd have signed him up by now, because Magnussen's there. I mean, Magnussen, you're signing him up next year, whatever, and I know he's got a contract, but I said it when me and Dan did our silly season stream. I feel like this year Mick has been, perhaps sounds more harsh than I mean it to, but has been a little bit exposed. He destroyed his teammate last year, but then K-Mag comes back after a year out, driving a Formula One car. He's not touched, not even in a simulator really, before he was in it in testing, because it was such a quick turnaround. And he's not wiping the floor. He is in points, wiping the floor with him. I'm going to get my stats up now. But I feel like do you see what I'm trying to say? I feel like he's been exposed a little bit in that you look at the season he had last year versus Mazepin, he destroyed him, and now Magnus has come in, actually competitive driver, and suddenly he looks a little bit lost. But the reason I just want to make the point, I just want to make this point. So before this weekend, because I've not updated them yet. So before this weekend, the qualifying battle is 8-3. Apparently to Mick Schumacher, but I think my stats are wrong there. I think I've got them the wrong way round. Kevin Magnussen 11-2 in the races, but Mick's actually doing all right. Average of no, I'm going to stop. My stats are completely wrong somewhere.
The way you have to look at,
but yeah,
I think the way you have to look at it there is look at the prospective places that have been talked about for him to go.
Yeah,
AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo, Alpine. Look at the seats that he would be taking over. Would the teams drop any of those people for him, or would they try to keep what they've got or look elsewhere? And it might sound harsh, but in every single eventuality, Mick is a downgrade. He's not performing as well as Yuki has been, or Zhou. Certainly not as Gasly. You can argue the potential with Piastri, Porsche, whoever else might be in line for the Alpine seat. That's the problem he's got. Not so much his own performance, just that performance versus other people who are in line for the seat.
Apologies for my live editing there. I opened the wrong thing and I could have put it in somewhere else. But that was the comparison before the summer break. And that's the official F1 stats. So, where are we? Obviously, ignore the wins and poles and that. But 5th is best start for Magnussen, 6th for Schumacher. 5th for Magnussen is his best finish. 6th for Schumacher, best finish. 11-2 in qualifying to Magnussen. 5-7. So Mick ahead in the races. Magnussen has a 4 DNFs to Mick's 2, and it's 22 points to 12 for Magnussen. So it looks bad in qualifying, but in the races, actually, Mick doing a good job. It's just whether you think that's enough for Haas to keep him when you consider other potential options, not only potential options in terms of talent, but also potential options that might bring the team a little bit of money, given that they lost their title sponsor this year.
Well, you see, this has just come into my head as well. There is another element that I'm pretty sure teams will consciously think about now: the cost cap. Look at the lack of, seeming lack of improvement in the Haas car. How much of that is because of the money Mick cost them in the first few races of the season?
Well, they said that the package was delayed because they had to be messing about building parts.
Yeah, because you've got Jeddah, you've got Monaco. He single-handedly cost them well over $2 million with pure unforced mistakes.
Interesting.
That will take its toll over a year.
Interesting point from Jay Ganesh, 45. Maybe if we consider 22 as first year for Mick, technically you can say that. Is his performance as good as Zhou or Yuki? First of all, on this being his first year, I mean, you could technically argue that's where the Haas were last year, but a year's experience is still massive in F1, whether it's at the front or the back. And teams won't look at it like that. But on the point, but also has he performed as well as Yuki and Zhou have?
No.
He scored more points than Zhou, but again, Zhou was very unlucky. Yuki was a bit erratic last year, but actually much stronger second half of the year. It's a good case for no. I think you might be right, Jonty. I don't know. I've got to be careful. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm Mick Schumacher fanboy, but he is the son of my absolute hero. So it's kind of difficult for me to say he's got to go. But I think if you look at the stats, they can easily be manipulated, but they don't always lie, do they? There can be a lot read into there. But I think actually, go on, Jonty.
I was going to say, I think we're all probably struggling to have the view we would have had, say, 3 or 4 years ago on this kind of thing, when you can base it just on certain things. Because with the regulation changes and all the and possible future changes and the cost cap, I think there's a hell of a lot more that goes into the decisions about a driver now than just 3 or 4 years ago. Especially for a team at the back of the grid. I mean, come on, we've had, I think 3 years non-stop of talks that Haas might leave because Gene's sick of the money spending. So when you see the car getting smashed to bits, it's bad.
It's a good. I know you make a good point. Actually, I know that the driver's salary is separate to the cost cap, but that's fine saying that about Mercedes or Ferrari or Red Bull. For a team like Haas, it's separate, but it's still a lot of money they're bloody spending, isn't it, on driver contracts? And also, they're not going to hit the cost cap anyway. So it's I think all I was going to say was that Mick is one of those where if he got to keep his seat next year or got a race seat next year, I wouldn't be surprised. But also, if he wasn't on the grid next year, I wouldn't be surprised. If that makes sense. I feel like I could see Haas giving him another year, or maybe someone like an Alfa Tauri giving him an opportunity if Gasly goes, because I'm not convinced Lawson's ready. I'm not. I actually, brings me to a point I was thinking about earlier. I think Red Bull are in a bit of a problem here with their young drivers, because it feels as though Helmut Marko was all behind Yuri Vips. And now that's not going to happen, and suddenly they're in a situation where they're looking at others. Because I think Vips was the next one for Red Bull to come up, and I think that was all but decided, really. Helmut Marko seems to be a big fan. So now they're looking at Lawson and Deruvula, but is Lawson ready? Is Deruvula ready? Are they good enough? There's a lot of question marks there. So maybe they might think, let's bring Mick in, the Porsche deal. We can, sweeten that a little bit with the German driver coming in, see how he gets on. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. I wouldn't be surprised to see him stay at Haas, but equally, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't get a contract for next year. It's weird. It's a weird feeling. It's one of those penalties, like the Latifi thing today. Wouldn't have been surprised if he got a penalty. Not surprised that he didn't either. It's kind of weird. Thank you to Pascal for your super chats. It's great stream as always, Sean and Jonty. Thank you very much. Says, I hope Joe stays at Alfa Romeo Sauber. He has a solid season and rarely makes any mistakes. Thank you for your super chat. Massively appreciated. So I kind of already said it, but I think Joe has earned another season at Alfa. It's whether I don't know, Jonty. The Alfa Romeo are staying for next year as a title sponsor. Maybe Audi will come in as some kind of sponsor or an engine rebadge or something like that in 24. So maybe there'll be a little bit of weight towards the possibility of bringing somebody else in, like a German driver. But I feel like if Audi want to bring in a Mick Schumacher or a German driver, they'd wait until they were coming in proper in 26, is my feeling on that. Never know, of course. You never know.
Yeah, but I mean, I may be reading a bit too much into what various companies think about such deals. But if they were going to come in as like an engine rebrand, they'd need a new engine supplier.
Yeah, you could rebrand Ferrari.
Not with Audi, the owners of Lamborghini.
No.
Can you imagine? You could hear the screams from Maranello.
Well, I know a team who wouldn't mind having a second team and could do with putting some of their young drivers there if they need to. Alpine. Not Alfa Romeo, but Sauber Renault for a couple of years. Then you can get your Duans or whoever alongside, you would assume, Bottas. Maybe. I mean, they can't rebadge it as Audi, but if they want to get away from the Ferrari thing, it's a point of making. Probably more likely Red Bull powertrains if they wanted to be allowed to rebadge something.
Yeah, possibly.
Or Mechachrome. What about Mechachrome? They make good engines.
Shut up.
Couple more, and then, I'll do one or two more. I'll just read some comments, and then we are going to wrap up because we're going 2.5 hours now. So, Drench wants to know about Drugovich. I'm having a very good season. I'm not sold on Drugovich. What year is it in F3 for him? I know you would. But then we both have liked Markelov in F1 for his overtaking, wouldn't we?
Yeah. Would
have been great. Dell actually says a Red Bull powertrain rebrand. Good chat. See, Dell, you see? On the same wavelength, which is, I can promise you, more terrifying for you than it is for me. Nick says the RS was too powerful today. I can still see Joe being around in 26, but not with the Audi team, says Richard. So rating him there. Vips won't get a seat in F1 because of his comments, says Paul. Probably not. You're probably right there. I'm just making the point that it felt like Helmut Marko was very much backing Vips, and now that he's not and he's out of the program, he's now looking at Lawson and Deruvula and maybe Iwasa as well. I think is another one. Maybe they're not. I don't think they're ready yet, to be honest. I think Lawson did all right on Friday. I didn't really keep up with it, but yeah. And Richard again. The issue is not enough seats. Raise the cost cap by 30 million. Have teams run 3 cars. Allow 24 starters per grid, with 6 being cut at qualifying. Do you know what? Why not? Why not? Issue is, how do you replace Mick? Who would replace Mick? Sorry. Sorry, from Zabasti. Yeah. This is the thing, isn't it? Who goes to Haas instead of Mick? I'll tell you what, that's our end. That's going to be a question. I'm going to take that comment. Thank you very much. And I will spin that to you guys in chat. If Mick goes from Haas, who replaces him? Not who do you want to replace him, who do you think replaces him? There's an obvious answer, Jonty. Who do you think?
Oh. Logan Sargent.
He's going to Williams, isn't he? Probably. Maybe. Perhaps.
If he doesn't,
Yeah.
there's an American link.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Maybe, yeah.
I'm trying to think of, is there an obvious answer? Not that I know of.
Ricciardo would be your obvious answer, because although I still think he will end up in the Alpine, now that they're chasing Gasly,
would he take such a massive step down?
He wants to race in F1, he might not have a choice. If he's in a position where he's got to choose Haas or Williams.
Yeah, you'd take Haas at the moment, wouldn't you?
Or does he take a sabbatical? Does he think about Hamilton's contract coming to an end? And I'm not saying he'll end up in a Mercedes. What I'm saying is Hamilton's contract comes to an end, it shakes the grid up, doesn't it? And will Alonso stay beyond 1 year at Aston? If Aston, let's say Aston are having a crap year next year, is Alonso going to honour that contract? There's lots of drivers out of contract next year. I don't think it'd be the end of the world for Ricciardo. Also to go away and just to kind of regroup a little bit, and then come back in a year's time when there's a few more seats up for grabs, and he's got a few more to pick from, hasn't he? But I still, there's something bugging me about it. But I still feel like Ricciardo to Alpine is on. But now all of a sudden this Gasly link is in. I'm kind of like, oh dear. So Ricciardo to Haas. I mean, I'll read some of these out. And
I wouldn't be against it.
No. Ricciardo and Magnus would be fun. I
mean, I'll admit this is very much a selfish take on it, but I do really, despite him saying he wants to stay in F1, I'd love him to go to IndyCar.
He'd enjoy
I think it would be a lot better for him. He would love it, and he would excel at it. He really would. Certainly on the street courses, and he can learn the oval stuff. He picks it up quick.
I tell you what is fascinating for the future. I'm looking at a conversation that's going on in chat, but I say it will be fascinating for the future, or is fascinating. 2026, we've got Audi coming in. Porsche are going to partner up with Red Bull. It also sounds like Honda want to come back. We could be in a situation in 26 where we've got Mercedes, Ferrari, Porsche, Audi, Renault, and whoever I just said, Honda. That's got to make things interesting.
Suppliers.
Six. And all of a sudden then Williams are going, oh, well, Red Bull are going to Porsche, and this is what I think Williams should have done when Honda left McLaren, by the way. I keep saying it. Let's go for an exclusive deal with Honda. Let's get a works deal. I don't think that's about that. We're going a bit into the future here, but I wouldn't be surprised if Williams are looking at a deal with somebody like Honda as a works deal in the future will be good. But anyway, that's something for another day. We'll get into that another day. Jamie says, Ricciardo, it's got to be, but that would cost money. That is the only issue, isn't it? How much is he going to charge? But I think his stock's come down a lot, hasn't it, Ricciardo? So they might be able to get him a bit cheaper. Plus, he's probably just had a very nice payout from McLaren. Whether it's in one lump sum or not, I don't know. It might be paid monthly or whatever. He might pay a salary next year. I don't know. So maybe Haas will get him on the cheap. We'll see. CPB1 says, Ricciardo. Hippity Hoppity, good afternoon, says that's Giovinazzi. Giovinazzi's a great shout, actually. He's got some run-outs for Haas this year, so maybe back in the frame. Raul just making a point, can they afford Ricciardo? A rookie will come with damage potential. Hulkenberg, it was inevitable that name was coming up.
No one said the other Nick.
Good point from Jamie. Mick brings the one-on-one money. The sponsor money. Fair point.
Yeah. Also, no one's mentioned Nick de Vries either.
Oh, they will do at some point. There'll be one in there somewhere, don't worry.
Because he was, as far as I remember, he was the main one linked for the Williams seat.
Kerr Walker says, rumour has it Ferrari is replacing Binotto with Eddie Jordan for 2023. Yeah, that is a whole other video, absolutely. Magnussen will be dropped before Mick, says CPB1. Giovinazzi is a name in there. Freddie said Grosjean. Danny Rick out unless Alpine don't get Gasly. Could be an interesting one. Ricciardo will not go to Haas. We shall see. Ricciardo to Haas means more links to NASCAR. Fair points. Richard says Danny Rick is done. Sad but true. Who will lose his interest in F1? That's another thing. I think it happened to Alonso a little bit. I do wonder if it's happened to Seb a bit as well. And if Ricciardo ends up driving at the back in a Williams or a Haas, how long does he want to be in the sport? Really, I can see him getting quite. I tend to agree that maybe not a year out of racing, but a year somewhere like IndyCar wouldn't be a bad thing for him. I think he'd enjoy that one. I see if anybody said anything interesting regarding that seat, or generally speaking. Well, it's all interesting, but yeah, I think we're going to wrap it up there. Yes, we are. 2 hours and 40 minutes. Oh, yes.
Well, I can leave you with a stat.
Oh, God. Go on, then.
Well, Max has just broken a record. A 62-year record. Of the lowest consecutive race to win consecutive races from 10th or lower on the grid. The only other person who's ever done it was Bruce McLaren, and he did it from 10th and 13th, and Max has just done it from 10th and 14th.
Oh, nice. Nice.
That's a random one.
Oh, I'm not saying absolutely to IndyCar built 2 JZ Lex. I'm just saying I'd like to see him in IndyCar, and I think he'd enjoy it. But I take your point. Yeah, I'm not saying he will go there. I must also say that about this channel. Please don't. I got a comment the other day on a video on the stream about me and Dan. Somebody saying, "Oh, you call yourself experts?" No, never called ourselves expert. We're just fans like everybody else that just want to talk about Formula One. So don't ever come away from one of these streams going, "Yeah, but Sean said Ricciardo will sign for Mercedes next year," because I didn't say that, for one. But two, we're not experts. We just think we are. No, we don't. Also, on the subject of comments like that, call yourself a journalist? No. Anyway, thank you very much, Jonty. A pleasure as always, mate. Great way to end the stream. Pleasure as always, mate. Really enjoyed that one. And can't believe we've got to wait another 5 days till FP1. God.
I know, it's ridiculous.
Let's have a race every minute. Every single day, let's have a race. Yeah, thank you very much, mate. It was great fun, and hopefully Zandvoort will be a cracker, but I'm sure I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for coming along, everyone, and giving us lots of really awkward questions. No change there. See you all next time.
Cheers, mate. Thank you. Thank you to Jonty. Thank you to you guys as well for tuning in. Call yourself a live stream. Yes. Well, not me personally. I'm not personally a live stream. Yes, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. By the way, I will update the patrons. I've got a couple more to add there, so thank you very much for your support. I do that at the end of every month, so I will make sure they're there. Don't panic. Thank you for tuning in. 3 more likes to get to 500. Come on. Don't make me create 3 accounts to do it. I forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, anyway, I will be back later this week with some F1 Manager. I'm going to see my sister tomorrow for the first time since February. So probably Tuesday evening, probably, for some F1 Manager. Then we've got the preview out at 4 p.m. on Thursday, BST. We'll probably do some F1 Manager on Friday, unless we've got some news that's worth wrapping up. And then, of course, it's the race reaction this time next week for the Dutch Grand Prix. Links in the description as well to social media. Don't forget to drop a like before you go and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.